What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Fantasy Files podcast, where we talk about our favorite fantasy series and topics. We are your co-hosts, Spencer and Gabe, and today we are joined once again by our friend Sam to talk about the third book in the Night Angel Trilogy, Beyond the Shadows. If you enjoy this content, please consider hitting those like and subscribe buttons and ring the little bell icon to get notified when we put up new content. We need your help to get to 500 subscribers. It seems that when channels hit the 500 mark, it kind of starts to snowball from there. And then YouTube ends up recommending our videos much, much more. So if you can help us out in that way, we would greatly appreciate it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Files Fantasy if you like probably inappropriate humor and random tweets about fantasy and sci-fi books. A little housekeeping. I was on an episode for the Fantasy for the Ages podcast, which you can find on Spotify and YouTube. And we talked about the third book in the Dresden Files. So if you're a fan of that series, I highly recommend going and checking them out. They are a fantastic podcast that also does a ton of Wheel of Time content as well, if you're into that. I'll have their stuff linked in the description below, as well as the podcast episode that I was on, if it's been posted already. Another bit of news, really exciting. Next week, we will have our first individual interview of a traditionally published author, the very prolific David Dalglish, to talk about his new book, The Bladed Faith. We'll do half the episode as spoiler-free, so anyone can check that out and not have to worry about getting spoiled on the book. And then the second half of the episode will be full spoilers, so if you've already read the book, you have something to enjoy there as well. I think that's pretty much it. So let's kind of reintroduce our guest and talk about what we've been reading. So Sam, you mentioned this last week, but just in case people didn't catch that episode, where can people kind of find you on the internet for, what do you do on the internet?
So I do a little bit of Instagram, a little bit of Twitter. I once in a while post to a blog, but it doesn't happen quite as often as I wish I did it. Life in a 4-year-old tends to get in the way of that a lot. But on Instagram, I am shelfish with Sam, _ with Sam. And then on Twitter, I'm Sam Reads 56. I'm a lot more active on Twitter these days than I am on Instagram. So Twitter's probably the best place to find me.
Sweet. And I'll have all her stuff linked down below. All right. So Sam, so you read Beyond the Shadows, obviously. Have you read anything else in the past couple weeks since we've seen you last?
Yeah, so I'm in a book club, and our newest book this month was The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which isn't fantasy, but it's a very good book if you're into, like, I don't know, I guess it's technically a romance, but it's a really fascinating story of a Hollywood starlet and the 7 husbands that she goes through, and there's like a really big twist in it. So it's a really good book. It's honestly one of my all-time favorite reads. I've probably read it like 5 or 6 times. It's one of my go-tos if I'm in a slump and you're like, okay, what can I reread to get me like back into the reading mood? I really like that. Or a book I was telling you guys about before. There's a Tyrion and Teclis omnibus, and it made me think of it because in that series, the place that they live, there's a huge mage called Caldor. So every time when I was reading this book and they would talk about the Caldorians, it kept like bringing it to the forefront because it was like the same thing. So I would definitely check out the Tyrion and Teclis omnibus if you're into really good world building, magic, and elves.
Okay, cool.
Awesome.
Sweet. Gabe, you read a couple things before, or I guess before and after Beyond the Shadows.
Yep. So I read the second book in the Threadlight saga, Stones of Light. Yeah. And let me just say, that was so good. I'm so excited for the third one to come out. That's probably my most anticipated right now is the third one. Yeah. And then I still have I didn't forget about it, but I just like piled other stuff on, but I still have like an hour of Among Thieves left. Yeah. So I'm going to finish that tomorrow. Actually, it's on my list. Nice. And then I started yesterday, and I'm only like an hour and a half in, maybe. The Bladed Faith, who we're going to have the author on next weekend. And so far, you haven't read it, or you haven't even started it.
I haven't started it. I'm interested to
Dude.
see what you say.
Oh, it is like incredible. The idea and like the plot that is set in place is like so unique and so interesting. The way that like I'm not going to say anymore just because I don't, you have to read it for yourself, but it is like, it's piqued my interest like to 10, like super.
Really?
Yeah. I'm very much like extremely intrigued and so excited to keep going. Cause it's like, yeah, I don't know. You'll just have to read it.
That's got me excited. When a book has you excited, I'm like, okay, it's gonna be.
No, I loved it. There was a couple times like where I was listening and I was just like, man, this is really cool. Like, I don't know. It's gonna be awesome. I'm excited.
Has it kind of given you a basic plot summary of like can you kind of explain that a little bit just so I know going into
for
it?
Sure. And I'm bad with names. So basically, you follow the prince when you start. And while you're kind of listening to him, he's in the castle with his family and with his guardian. They're being invaded by the empire.
Oh, okay.
And so these books are based on faith, right? And so there's a religion that the people that were already on the island, their kingdom like has followed for a long time. Like there's gods and this kind of stuff that they pray to. And the empire is like a one god nation. So they're abolishing all the other gods.
Okay.
Right. And so they basically come and they take over and they, start hacking stuff down and like invade this country. And so then after that, once all that happens, you start to follow a girl, and I can't really say anymore because it'll start to give it away, but you follow this girl kind of, she's kind of like an assassin. She's got like a different mission though, from like what you would think of as assassin.
Okay.
And then you start to follow her, and that's where, it gets insane.
Okay.
So yeah, that's probably not very good, but I tried. I'm not very good at elevator pitches.
No, that gets me in the door. That's good to know.
Yep.
It's kind of like isn't that like in Game of Thrones, the old gods versus the new gods, and
yeah,
keep the old ones like under the rug.
Yep, exactly. And then another thing I can say too is that there are actually gods. Like there's
like actual
gods,
living gods.
The gods that they would pray to fought in this first battle. And basically after that, it's just the empire and their one true god, which I haven't seen yet, if there is one, like just trying to oppress everybody. Like if if they're caught speaking the name of their gods, like off with the head type thing. And so, and so there's these groups that are basically rebels. And so this girl is going to meet like with a priest that would be killed if saw, and then they do like a little pray meeting and stuff and whatnot. So yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, okay. I wrote it down. You sold me.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. I'm super excited for that.
Yeah.
So recently we talked a little last time about how I was reading. I had only just gotten like maybe 40% of the way through the first Red Rising book.
Yes.
And since then I got all the way through the first one and all the way through the second one. And the end of the second one, like, oh my God, like I got through the end of the second one, and then I immediately had to start Grave Peril for the podcast yesterday. And then I had to immediately start Beyond the Shadows for the podcast today. And it was like the first time where I was like legitimately upset that I had to do podcast books because the way the second book ends, oh my God, I'm like, I need to go on to the third book right now. Cause it's so, oh my God, the second book is like The Expanse meets Game of Thrones. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the book, there's kind of this thing that's very similar to what would happen in Game of Thrones, a big event that happens. And it was just like devastating. It was, oh my God. It was so
you started them though. Cause I was like, you're going to love them. The first couple ones are phenomenal. Like you can't put them down. They're just, they're so good. I need to pick it up. Cause it's been like at least 2 years since I've read them, but when we were messaging about it over the last week, I was like, oh, I got to read these again. It's been too long.
For sure. So yeah, the end of the second book just hit me in all the feels. It wasn't quite to the point where I was like, it wasn't quite to the point where I was like tearing up or anything, but it was like a huge like emotional response from the end of this book. And I just felt like, oh my, it's just devastating. It's like the most tragic thing that can possibly happen.
Who's your favorite character?
Severo, by far.
Down.
Yeah, Severo is such a great character, and like we were talking on Twitter, I picture him as Ewan Rion from people may know him from Misfits or from Game of Thrones. He was Ramsay Bolton. And he is just like the perfect Severo in my mind.
Because he's good at that like crazy, kind of character. So he would be said that I was like, yes, cast absolutely.
Just like just the like short, scrappy kind of dude. Like, I absolutely love Severo. And also in the second book, I was really starting, I don't want to give anything away, but I was really starting to like, what was his name? Was it Titanus or do you know who I'm talking about? It was his other friend who in the first book, he was like a straight up murderer and he was just like killing people and then he got whipped.
I just can't think of the name because it's been, so that was the first one. It's like the Hunger Games book, I call it.
Right. And like people who haven't read it won't know what I'm talking about. And that, so it's not really spoilers, but in the first book, like when he was whipping him, and then he whipped himself and oh my God. Yeah. That character after that just grew on me so much. And then even more in the second book. And so I really liked him as well. And then I read Grave Peril, the third book in the Dresden Files for that podcast I was on yesterday. And man, that is every time I read a Dresden Files book, I'm like, oh my God, I just love this series so much. I feel like I read because like Dresden Files and the Night Angel trilogy were really kind of the first things that really got me into like adult fantasy. And so, I've read Dresden so many times and now I'm reading all these other books. So it's only, every few months I'll go back and reread a Dresden Files book. And every time I do, I'm just like, oh my God, like this is why I fell in love with this series. Like there's just so much, especially in that third book, there's so much foreshadowing for the future. There's so many things that start in that book that kind of ripple throughout the rest of the series. Like Jim Butcher is just so good at that. So yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anything I've watched lately. I don't know if you've watched anything recently, Gabe, but
I have been.
I think I tried remember the movie Murder on the Orient Express?
Yeah.
So the Death on the Nile, right?
Yeah.
I'm like halfway through it, 3/4 of the way. Me and my husband have been doing like 45-minute installments every night because like it's good, but you have to pay attention. Like you really have to pay attention, and it's slow moving. And I understand why it is because it's like a whodunit and they want to confuse you. And I keep saying to my husband, I don't know if you watch The Office, I'm like, it's like Dwight Schrute says, it's never who you most suspect or least suspect. It's always who you medium suspect.
Right. Yeah.
The person right in the middle, but it's all over the place. It kept changing. I was like, I have no idea who did it. And then there's like 2 murders
Okay. So you actually kind of just sold me on watching the rest of it because I stopped it about 30 or 40% of the way through because I was like, this is just like I was not enjoying the beginning of that movie. Like the way that he gets to the boat party or the way that he gets to the wedding and stuff. And I'm like, really, you just happen to be in Egypt and happen to run into your best friend who's climbing a pyramid. And then there happened to be a wedding going on that he invited you to. Like, yeah, fucking right. I'm sorry. What's that?
What I said, because I can't watch something without like I need things to be realistic in a sense.
Yeah.
Like when they see the guy flying the kite on the pyramid and he's like, he knows who it is instantly. And then they know how far away he is. I go, you can't tell who that is from where. I'm like, see, that annoyed me. That definitely annoyed me. I was like, he could not tell who that was. And I go, you're telling me he could hear him from all the way up on that pyramid? And like, come with me. We've got this crazy week of a wedding we're going to do. And
and like, what are the chances that they're both there at the same time? Like,
and the murder doesn't happen until halfway through the movie. And it's more than a 2-hour movie.
That's what I've heard. I haven't even gotten to the murder yet.
And it's so blah. Like the murder's not even, I don't know. I'm hoping there's like a really good payoff, but I'll just never forget in the Murder on the Orient Express, I felt like there was no way you could have figured out who did it. And so I've been trying to talk myself through and be like, okay, there may not be like enough information for us to like, as a viewer, figure this out on our own. And that kind of annoys me.
Yeah.
I want to at least like, have some theories and guesses and spoiler warning from the first one. It was like everyone was the murderer because it was like dated back to some like child killing.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was like, is it going to be something like that where like there's literally no way for you to figure out who did it?
Right.
Like the Christie novels, because I think they're like this big. They're like huge. So it kind of makes sense that they're really long, drawn out movies.
Right. Have you seen Knives Out?
I loved Knives Out. I love any sort of like whodunit, murder mystery. I even liked the Adam Sandler, murder mystery. I think it's literally called Murder Mystery on Netflix.
I haven't seen that.
It's him and Jennifer Aniston, and the second one I think is either in production right now, but it's another one where they meet someone and they end up on a boat and somebody gets murdered.
Oh yeah, I watched that like a week and a half ago.
Yeah.
Nice.
I liked that, and so I'm really excited for the second one to come out because I don't think they make enough, murder mystery movies. I love that kind of stuff, so I loved Knives Out. I thought that was great, and I think they're making a second one for that too.
Oh, no, they better, because I really liked it. Yeah. And nobody spoil it for Gabe. I've been trying to get him to watch it for forever.
I'm glad you said that because I totally would have. Yeah, something very important. So. I won't say anything, but you have to watch Knives Out. It's
for sure
so good. It's so good.
Yeah, Gabe, you and Leah would that's a
Leah's
night movie if I ever saw
the problem
one.
is that Leah's already seen it.
Oh, then she can watch it again.
I don't know if because I've tried and there's been times where I'd rather do this or whatever. I just have to find some alone time.
Or just be like, I am picking the movie tonight. We're gonna do this.
Read a book or something if you don't want. Well, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts though on. Did you enjoy Wheel of Time, the TV show?
No,
I haven't seen it.
I hated it.
I loved it.
Did you really?
I see. I didn't go into it with the mindset of like, okay, I'm comparing it to the books. If there's those people out there, I feel like if it's not to a T exactly what the book says, they're not going to be happy, or they were never going to be happy. I think there's a lot of people like that, but I loved it.
So here's the thing though. I definitely don't think that it needs to be to a T. I think you can have a really good adaptation without following exactly how it's done. But just the amount of things they changed, and not only like the story, but also just like the lore of the world. Like if you're going to change the story a little bit, whatever, but don't mess with like how the world is like supposed to operate. Mm-hmm. And oh my God. Yeah. I just have really negative feelings for the Wheel of Time show.
I really didn't like the books, but I was so much more like open to it. And I had read it so long ago that like I didn't remember like the tiny details, but I did remember I remember looking at my husband and saying like, that was the whole first book in the first episode or something like that. I was like, that was literally like the first book. And like the second episode was like the whole second book. So I was like, they need to slow down. I was like, I know there's a lot of books, but like they need to slow down a little bit.
So I
thought it was quality.
I think you might be misremembering what happens in the first book, because the whole first season was the first book. And you're right, they completely rushed through it because Amazon only gave them 8 episodes. I think
they needed more.
Yeah, I think that if Amazon had given them like 10 or 11 episodes and given them a longer time allotment for the first episode, they really could have done it. But they just didn't have enough time. And like they're trying to cram all this stuff into 8 episodes. And then but part of the fault is on them too, because they use like 2 of those episodes for things that didn't even happen in the book, like not at all.
Like the lesbian arc, that was like not something that happened in the books, right? Like the whole like lovers episode, like I don't think any of that happened.
See, I don't think I even made it that far. I got to episode like 5. I got to episode 5, and I'm one of those people that's like, I strongly believe in voting with your wallet or your views or whatever. So if you really like something, like vote with your wallet, like buy more of it or something, so that, because that's the thing that's going to make these companies, do more of the things you like. And if you don't like something, then don't give it your views, because then that's going to give them the feedback they need to say, hey, we either, got to do something different or change this or whatever. And so I'm a pretty strong believer in that. And so I just stopped. I was like, I'm not going to give this any more of my views, because I'm not enjoying
all like 3 or 4 times, I think, at least. So I gave them your views.
Yeah. you gave them the ones that I took away from them.
Exactly. I'm sorry.
That's all right. All right. So what have you been watching lately, Gabe?
So I had watched this show, like, I think with my mom when I was quite a bit younger, but I just started Weeds again.
Oh, yes. I love Weeds.
Yep. And it is I got my girlfriend hooked on it too. And so we've been watching an episode or 2 every night.
Yes.
And then we're all caught up on The Good Doctor right now, which is another one that we like to watch. And so we have to wait like a week per episode or whatever. And then what was the movie? Oh, and then I rewatched the new Spider-Man with Leah too.
Oh, nice.
So that was super cool.
I liked it. I went back and forth, but I liked it overall.
Yeah, the newest one.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then on the topic of murder mysteries, we were at Barnes and Noble today. And I don't know if you guys have ever heard of these things, but basically, you're not gonna be able to see it. Basically, it's like a murder mystery in a box. And so you gotta be the detective and figure out all these props and stuff. And so I'm pretty stoked about it. We're going to try it out tonight and see what happens with it. So
that's going to be a ton of fun.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. And this is like one of the easiest ones. They've got this little rating down. You can't see it, but they've got this little rating down there. And so like, there's ones that are like 5-star, super hard, and like medium and stuff. And yeah, I don't know. I'm excited.
Sweet.
Yep.
All right. Well, now that we've talked about all the media we've consumed over the past couple of weeks, shall we get into the series, guys?
Yes.
So this is your spoiler warning. If you have not read the end of the Night Angel Trilogy, I highly recommend going and doing that and then coming back, because we are going to spoil everything. So spoiler warning in 3, 2, 1, you've been warned. Okay, guys. So I am going to do my very best to keep us on time, but there is so much that happens in this book. If it gets to be too late for anyone, please let me know and I will make sure to wrap us up. And let's do this a little bit differently than our usual kind of routine. Most of my notes are in this beginning general discussion and favorite moments, and we can kind of take up this beginning time with all of our main thoughts and then kind of go through the other notes as we want. And we don't have to hit every topic like usual. I'm not even sure if we'll talk about like world building, since it was kind of already established in the last book, I feel like.
Yeah.
There wasn't much new that was introduced besides maybe the Emiri or whatever. And I'd kind of like to switch. Usually we would go through the notes and we'd hit our favorite quotes and then we go to favorite moments. And I think we should do favorite moments first, just so we can make sure that we all get through those. And then if we get to favorite quotes and it's like way too late, then we'll just kind of cut that short. So otherwise, let's jump straight to it, guys. How do we feel about this last book? Let's start with Gabe.
Man, so considering the series, like, 1, 2, 3, I would probably say that I really like the first book, just the kind of like Kyler, getting to know him and then it's obviously sets everything else up. But the third book, I think, is like in a different way, also like my favorite, if that makes any sense.
Yes, I totally agree.
Yeah. And so I love, there's a lot of action. There's a lot of plot going on from seven, you get so many POVs, right? Following these characters, and it's, obviously same story, but it's so cool to see them from like Vi's perspective and then, Lean's perspective and this and that, and how they kind of start to mesh and, eventually they're all together at the end.
Yeah.
So I love it. And the last like hour of that book is like edge of the seat, like, oh my God, what is happening?
Yeah.
So good. So yeah, I super duper enjoyed it. I'm so glad to go through it again, man, because it has been a while, at least for me.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And so it's like, just like you said, it's one of those series that it's my fallback, just like Dresden Files or Iron Druid Chronicles. It's amazing. And of course the ending, dude, good.
God,
but man, cliffhanger at the end too, which
I know, a little bit of a cliffhanger.
Yep. But yeah, super good.
God, I thought the ending wrapped up like really quickly in a way at that one part.
Did.
Like, wait, slow down. Like I need a little bit more than what you're giving me.
I know. I feel the exact same way. Yeah. Go ahead, Sam. What'd you think of your general thoughts on this book?
I really liked it. And I mean, I said in the last episode how I kind of screwed myself with listening to like the graphic audio and that was always in the back of my head, like, oh, this is like the worst graphic audio I've ever heard. But I mean, I loved the third book. It was definitely sometimes because I was listening to it, I could get a little confused just because I feel like there was so much going on in this third sense, they're trying to, wrap everything up as opposed to like the first book where it's basically just, Kyler and Durzo almost the whole book. But I enjoyed it. I really liked it. I blew through it and I would really recommend the series to anyone. I really enjoyed it overall, much more than I really thought I was going to. Definitely.
Awesome.
For sure. Yeah. I think this definitely needed to be 4 books total, didn't it? I think this last book could have definitely been split up into 2 books, because by the time, like, I'm so glad that I took like meticulous notes as I went along, because by the time I got to the end of the book, I was like, how did this book even start? Like, I can't remember like the first half of this book. But yeah, I don't know. I think I feel exactly the same way as you, Gabe, because like the first book is like super nostalgic and it's that very narrow kind of grim dark story that I really, really like. But this book just has all of the things happening, like all of the things that we've been leading up to are kind of finalized in this book, or not finalized. We talked about, or Sam talked about, how the ending kind of wraps up really, really quickly there. And I feel like, that last little epilogue or whatever, like, it was just a really quick snapshot of where everybody is now. And I really could have used either like a full chapter or a full like couple chapters on where everyone was now. But I do kind of like, in some ways, I kind of like how it leaves it open-ended enough for you to kind of think like, oh, this person is probably going on to do this, and this person's doing that. And even the wolf at the end kind of gives a a summary of where everybody will be going in the next few years. And so, yeah, I really enjoyed that, because then it's like, you know, he tells Kyler, you know, you will be welcome wherever you go while you're living in this specific body. You know, people will recognize you and you'll be hailed as a hero. Mama Kay will go on to rule Scenaria, and kind of goes through all these different things. I'll talk about that more in favorite moments, but yeah, literally the entire, maybe even a little bit longer than an hour of the final part of the book, the last hour of it, I was literally in tears through the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I was even re-listening to the last hour before we hopped on the podcast. I was kind of finishing up some notes, and I was listening to all that, and I still just like had like tears welling up in my eyes again, because you know, for me, I think I started this series, I must have been like 16 or 17. And I've reread it every couple years since then. So I've read this a bunch of times since then. And I've just been with these characters for so long. And so, you know, I probably haven't read this trilogy for the past, I don't know, 3 years or so. And so getting to read it this time, and this ending, I'm just like, oh my God, I forgot how devastating, but also how like hopeful it is. Like, it leaves you on like a hopeful note, but you still don't know everything. And there's just so many like terrible things that have happened. And oh my God, is it a good ending? Holy crap.
Yeah.
Thank God there's another book coming, because as I was getting to the end of this, I was like, oh my God, I forgot that there's so many things that we don't quite get to know about, like Janine's twins.
That's what I was gonna say.
The
baby thing. I had to rewind and re-listen to it, because I was like, wait, are they saying what like I think they're saying? I was so confused by it at first.
Yeah. So they probably are. That's a wild thing to find out at the end. Basically, when Elaine touches the sword, she can use that magic that everyone else is pushing through it. And so just like she made the flowers bloom as kind of a last wish kind of thing, she also put her child into Janine.
It was Dorian that did that though. It was Dorian that transferred her child. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, I'm getting confused. I think by her touching the sword and being part of that, then Dorian, he was able to reach in and pull it. Yeah.
See, I think if there's a new book, don't you think it would be about like the two twins? Like I think like would be like the whole plot, right?
Yeah,
for sure.
I bet that's going to be it. I would also I go back and forth with this, because as much as I want a continuation to Kyler's story, I also really want a series about the heroes of legend, like Jorson Alcestis and Achilles Thorne, Ezra the Mad, and all. I want to see all these people so bad. I want to know this whole storyline, because at the end there, when Kali pulls up her staff and turns all the walls clear, and there's just like this massive army outside. And she's like, do you see this army? Like, Jorson Alcestis could have used this army. And Kyler is like, oh my God, is this what Jorson Alcestis had to fight? Like, is this what he had to deal with? And so I would love to see, you know, the corruption of Callie. What was her name? Trace.
Trace. Yes.
And her corruption arc, how Durzo gets the Kakari. And just this epic battle that they have to fight. I would love to see that.
Agreed.
But going back to this book, did you guys like how the first book kind of starts off in this narrow story, and then by the end it's like it goes from like grimdark to epic fantasy? Did you guys like that transition?
I did, yes. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I think the reason why because obviously it's still grimdark, but it just like you said, first was just very grimdark in all aspects. And then second book opens up more. And then the third is like quite a bit less. I mean, it's still grimdark, but you get a lot less of it. And then more of like the fantasy and the monsters and the stuff like that. So I did enjoy it. And I think that it left just enough grimdark in the last one to like still classify very grimdark, if that makes any sense.
For sure.
I mean, definitely when you think of like the whole like concubines stuff, like I didn't really get much more grimdark. I feel like, where they're talking about all of his wives are going to be on the pyre with his body. And I'm like, doesn't he have like hundreds? You're just kill hundreds of women. Okay. All right.
Yeah. Yeah. But by the time it got to the end of this book, I was like I forgot how epic this story gets, like how big in scope that it gets. And I totally forgot about, like, I remembered like Dorian's prophecies, but there's other prophecies that are going on at the same time. And so we don't see all of them fulfilled, but by the end of this book, we see like, even there's prophecies about Logan, and they didn't even know it was about Logan. And they're like, oh, in the North, like you will, I forget what the prophecy is, like the man with the dragon tattoo will do something. And then we were like, oh, that's Logan by the end of it, turning into the High King. And so it's like, I don't know, by the end of it, I was just like, wow, this is like epic fantasy in the most like literal sense. Like this is just huge. And I really enjoyed that. What did we think? When did
this book come out though? Because you're saying he's writing another one. Isn't this one like, wasn't it 2015?
No, this was like, let me see, maybe like 2006.
So even further back. So I'm just curious as to what's making him now want to jump back. Has he?
Yeah. So
right. He did the Dark Prism or.
Yeah. So this last book came out in 2008. And then I would imagine he just spent so much time in the Night Angel world that he wanted to branch out and do another series. And so then he did what's it called? Oh, the Lightbringer series, which includes like the Black Prism or whatever the first book is. And that was supposed to be a trilogy. And then he got to the third book and he was like, I need like 5 of these. And so he turned it into like a 5-book series.
Got it, okay.
And so he just got done with that series maybe a year and a half ago. I think the last one came out. And so then it was recently where maybe 6 months ago or so, where he went on to the Legendarium podcast. And he's like, hey, I have a bit of news. I am going back to Mid Cryu to do more books in that. And people thought for a long time that he wasn't going to return to the Night Angel series, because when he started doing the Lightbringer series, he was like, honestly, like I'm burnt out. He's like, I really want to move on to something else for a while. But there was so much, as you can tell from the end of this book, there's so much more story to tell. And so it's kind of like, I mean, he's got to get back there eventually, probably. And so I'm just happy that he's jumping back into it now.
For sure.
So what did we think of the reveal of the consequence of Kyler's immortality? When he finds out what it costs for him to come back each time.
Yeah, that was shocking to say the least. I kind of like obviously, and it's said before, like, there's got to be a cost for this.
Yeah,
got to be something else. And when he finally tells him that, and then he finds out it's Aline, it was like bullet in the heart, dude.
Yeah,
it's like so sad.
Yeah, did you see that coming, Sam?
I didn't. And I was actually really happy though, because, I'm a stickler. I get so annoyed when there's like, when he was going to read the note and it was covered in Durzo's blood.
Yeah.
And then like, you didn't find out what it meant in book 2. And I was like, okay, I just need to know, like, don't hold this over my head. So when I found out, I was just so relieved to know that I think it like took a second.
Yeah.
To like sink in at what they just said. And I was like, oh, and then I started thinking, okay, so like every time, Durzo had said he had changed, who he was so many times, like how many people did he love, and like the implications of it. It just kind of like I had to pause it for like a couple minutes and really like sit and think on it. And I was just like, okay, all right, that's where we're going with this. So okay, and of course he finds out like after he's just died again.
Yeah.
Right.
So like it's too late to change anything. And
Right.
I thought it was like a great, twist. It has terrible implications, but I thought it was great because it really makes it have meaning. Like you can't, die and start over without being willing to give up something that you truly love.
Right.
There's, double-edged blade, just so I thought that was great.
For sure. Yeah, I definitely think, first of all, Durzo should have told him before he went onto the wheel, because Durzo visits him in jail. And Durzo should have been like, are you sure you want to do this?
Yeah.
But also I really like the consequence for this, because when I first read it, I did not see it coming.
Yeah.
And I think that this probably should have been introduced in book 2, so that every time he did die, it was like, oh my God, who's going to die? But, it definitely, him having infinite lives, it might feel to like a new reader or something, someone who doesn't know what the end game is, like, oh, there's kind of low stakes because he can just come back infinitely. And so I think introducing that in book 2 would have made it like, okay, so it's not just like video game, infinite lives kind of thing. But yeah, I definitely, the consequences for that are definitely interesting. And it's different than any other kind of infinite life kind of book I've read too. And one of the cool things was how Kurok plays into that. We kind of little by little discover by the end that if he were to die and then Eileen were to die soon after, if he killed himself with Kurok before that, then it would break the magic and they would be able to live.
Well, no. Didn't they say that he won't come back though? Right? It would just
he wouldn't come back. Yeah,
okay.
it would only save Eileen. It wouldn't save.
Yeah.
It wouldn't save him. What storylines throughout this book did you guys think were maybe unnecessary or could get cut out? I kind of felt like Lantano Garawashi's storyline could have gotten cut out. Like he was a great character, but in the end, he didn't have much to do with like the final battle. Do you guys feel that?
I mean, kind of. He had something to do with, Sior Callistos, however you say it. Like that was like, he was, that sword is like a main character almost at this point. And so he got it, and you're like, okay, well now I'm invested, because if he has it, then they can't do what they need to do, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, but he by the end of the book, he had the fake one that they made. And so Sior Calista, the real Kurok, was out in Ezra's wood, and then Durzo goes and gets it.
Oh yeah, okay. All right.
And that's kind of why I was like kind of whatever on his storyline, because his whole thing was he's trying to save himself, because if they know that he lost Sior Calestos, then he would have to like sacrifice himself basically. And then Fier just goes on this whole hunt to make this like fake sword for him. And then that sword didn't really come into play in any big way by the end. And so I was like, man, that's probably something that could have been cut out just to save a little bit of time, in the book. What one less thread that we're trying to follow that is confusing. All right, let's see. So there's a lot of I honestly didn't remember there being this much of this, but there's a lot of like religious kind of themes going throughout this book. I don't know if you guys noticed this, but like a lot of the Dorian stuff, like once he denies the god and starts using the Veer, he kind of starts to lose himself and he's judging his actions on his own morality rather than what his God wants him to do. And I just thought there's a lot more that I've probably forgotten by now, but I just thought it was interesting, like how many like biblical references or general religious references were in this book. What did you guys think about like all of the magic, or I guess really the Kakari working through the power of love? Did it feel tropey? Did it feel earned?
It just sounds like I don't know. I don't think it's something I ever would have come up with. I don't want to say cliche because it's not, but I don't know. You could say like I have like a cold heart, So like when it was like based on love, I was just like, oh come on. Like I rolled my eyes. I was like, really? Like that was like the one thing I think I like couldn't get behind. I was just like, oh, love, like I get it, but like
there was probably just a better way to, like, they probably could have gone with the same idea by using like a different word or a different term or something, like, it's powered by, I don't know. I feel like, multiple times throughout like the second half of this book, and it's like, oh yeah, the magic is able to work because of the power of love. And it was really eye rolling. Like I forgot how many times it's mentioned.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of a very tropey trope. But it also, I think it also kind of worked in some cases, because although it is really eye rolling, when everybody comes together at the end because of the power of love. And some of the smaller instances, like the way that Eileen loves Vi because of their whole situation. Like she loves Kyler, and she loves him enough to allow Vi to like take over for her. And so those kind of instances were like, oh, it worked really well there. But the main way that it worked really well was coming in at the end, where everybody is just like completely united. Because if there's one thing that love does, especially in fantasy books, is it kind of unites everybody. And so I feel like it was kind of used as, in a good way, as a device for everybody to kind of come together and unify at the end. And so I did really, really like that part. But a lot of the other times, like how the Kakaris work, I'm like, why does the Black Kakari work? Because love. Like why?
It's ironic for like a grimdark novel.
Yeah.
That it ended up all being based on love. I was like, all right, definitely did not expect that. Like I didn't see that one coming. So
100%. Yeah. So kind of going on to talk about the author a little bit, and the audiobook narrator, I guess. What Brent Weeks stepped up his game like so much in this book. Like rereading it this last time, I was just like, going through the first book, I'm like, wow, I did not realize that this book had so many just like storytelling issues, and how it was kind of choppy at some parts and still enjoyable, of course, but like it was obviously like his first novel, right?
Yeah.
And by the time we get to this third book, I'm like, wow, like there's a lot going on, and it's definitely hard for a new reader or something, but the pacing is really good. Like there's always something going on. There's always like there was no part in the book where I really felt like it was getting boring, or like, can we move it along, or maybe a couple small parts here and there, but nothing significant. What'd you guys think of the pacing and just the overall kind of growth of Brent Weeks throughout this trilogy?
I would totally agree with you. I think that in the third book, there was so many more, like, maybe not than the second, but a lot more like POVs, right? And different focuses that the writing, had to come from, behind whose eyes and going on. So I think in that aspect, there was a lot of growth, and maybe just because we didn't see it, I did notice kind of the choppiness and some like slower, faster, sections in the first book that could have been smoothed out. But this one I thought flowed super well, especially in the things that I would think would be a lot harder writing from all those different POVs. I think it worked out well. And I never felt like, I never was like, oh, come on, hurry up, like wanting to fast forward. Or I didn't even really, there's a couple times just to see if I was correct in my thinking that I would have to like go back. But even then, like I could follow it at a good pace. And not, be upset about anything.
For sure. What'd you think, Sam?
It was great. I felt like right, out the gate, it was really fast moving. I definitely thought it was like the fastest paced out of all the books. It just kept going and going and going, which was great because you were getting all those answers that you were looking for that have been building up, all the conflicts and everything. And I mean, I blew through it. I couldn't stop listening. There was just too much happening, and like there was no like good stopping point, like because I needed to know what was happening next. So I definitely, out of all three of the books, this was definitely the one I like listened to the quickest because I just needed to know what next. I think there was only one part, honestly, in the whole book that I was a little like, all right, come on. And I think that was like when Vi was at the Chandri, for a little bit, and I was like, all right, I don't really care about this. Like, come on, I don't need to hear anymore. But everything else was just really fast paced, and that's what I love in a book, like, because you just can't get bored.
Yeah, for sure. And you liked the audiobook this go around, right? Much better than the graphic audio.
I went back to the regular this time. And my husband was calling me a psycho this morning because I was listening to it on my phone on speaker, and I was listening to it at 3x the speed.
No way.
Oh, that's crazy. How do you do it?
How did you get any of the content?
And he was like, how can you understand what they're saying? So I like listened to it for like 30 seconds and I like repeated it right back to him.
Wow.
He was like, you're insane.
Go ahead. Sorry.
When I listen to it that fast, my mind can't wander because I'm forced to like fully focus on what's going on in my ear. And if it's even a little bit slow, my mind just starts to wander. So like I have to do it in a way where like I'm forced to.
Yep. I feel like that's a knack. Like you have to be built that way. Cause like I can listen, like I tried 2x and that was fast, but like normally now, like I can listen on like 1.6, 1.7 and still get everything. Some books are different, but like, cause I've had friends, you can, listen quickly, but retain the information. Which is super cool. I wish I could do that.
Yeah, it's honestly one of the only ways I can really do audiobooks, because if it's too slow, my mind just literally starts. It's the ADD, like
for sure.
It just goes anywhere but what I'm doing. So when I listen fast, I'm like forced to really pay attention and can't really let my mind wander. So yeah, he was like, you're insane. What you're doing right now. He was like, but you're insane. I was like, leave me alone. Let me get back to my book.
That's right. Yeah. Can you like speed read too? Like, can you read books very quickly?
Like, I read a lot of like really big, thick books because I read so fast that like, I like the bigger books because they'll at least like last me 2 or 3 days. Where if I have a 300-page book, I could finish that in just a couple hours sitting on the couch. If it take me that. But that's why I usually read the really big ones because it'll at least take me a couple of days.
For sure.
But, I read really, really fast.
That's cool.
That's wild.
Yeah. When I was like in middle school and high school, and they would have someone read for your class, all my classmates knew, like, have Sam do it because Sam will read really fast and be done way earlier than we need to be.
That's awesome.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the magic system. Sam, you have a note here saying that you had trouble understanding some of it. Maybe we can fill in some blanks.
I honestly just think it was because I wasn't physically reading it, and I didn't like take the time to like stop and like think over what I just read. I was just kind of like, I guess like I'm not as interested in really like the ins and outs of how it works, because I still could understand like the basis of the story without it.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, scenery descriptions, I just glaze over those because I can't picture it anyway, so I don't need those descriptions. I think I told you guys last time, there's like two types of people when they read, they can see everything they're reading. And then people just kind of get a vague, idea. And I'm the vague idea. I can't picture anything unless I get to see it first, and then I can picture it again on my own. But yeah, I had a lot of trouble with the magic systems and the Kakari, and so it was like in his body, and like he could have saved his hand, but he didn't know he could save his hand. And then like you could see it when it came to their skin, like it came to the top of their skin when they used it. I was confused about that, so I just didn't know if it was like really necessary.
I don't know about like necessary, but basically it's it can take the form of anything. So he can make like a claw out of it. He can coat himself in it, and then it can become like invisible and turning him invisible. Or like, one of the ways that it appeared sometimes was like bleeding out of his skin, because it's like in him, like somewhere in him it resides there. And so sometimes it would come out through like his pores or something.
But then it was also like a ball that he could call. So I think that
could call the ball
confused me. It was like, oh, did he take it out of his body and just make it a ball? Like what? Why wouldn't he just keep it safe, like inside of him?
Usually he was bringing it out as a ball to like show somebody, or to like give to Durzo or something like that.
Okay.
I like to think of it as like, and this is just my like
headcanon.
Yeah, pretty much. Like kind of like like nanotechnology, right? Like it's technology in his bloodstream that he can just like subconsciously control in any way, shape, or form. Can do like externally, it can do limited things like invisibility, but like internally in shapes and claws and hammers, like the sky's the limit. He can do whatever he wants with it.
Yeah.
So that helped me kind of understand it a little bit better.
There was even a moment in the, I think it was the last book, where his hand gets cut off, and the Kakari comes out through his bloodstream and kind of caps off all the veins and muscles and arm and stuff to stop it from bleeding.
Yeah.
Because then like later Durzo was able to like give himself wings.
So that was separate from the Kakari. Yeah. So that's just his like ultimate form of body magic that he knows.
Okay.
Yeah, because like the Kakari is almost like a device. Like it's almost like a, what's that?
Like a weapon?
Yeah, kind of. It's like a magical, it's like the magical MacGuffin that is like, it already has magic in it. It's not like its own form of magic. It's just like a magical item kind of thing. And so that is like completely separate from the talent and like the weaves that people do and stuff like that. And then the body magic was like part of that weaving that Durzo knows how to do. Let's talk about some of the new stuff we learned about the Kakari, and kind of I guess like the note I have here is kind of how Durzo relates to it too. The wolf tells Kyler that Durzo lived many slower lives free of killing, but couldn't be satisfied because he was a man of action. Every time he went back to battle, his wife or children, whatever he had at the time, would usually die because of it when he would go into battle and end up dying. And so he ended up trying just not to love anyone to avoid this, and kind of drowned it out with like killing and drinking and whoring and stuff. And so the Kakari left him because there was no more love in him to fuel the Kakari, which that's another interesting way, like as tropey as it is, that's another interesting way that is used, because, that would that would seem like the natural solution. Well, if it's going to kill the people I love, I just won't love anybody. And then when I die, it has nobody to kill, or it will kill people I don't care about. But in order for the Kakari to even do its thing, like love has to be there in the first place. And so I thought that was kind of an interesting conundrum, and it tells us a lot about who Durzo was in relation to the Kakari and like why it left him. Because in the first book, we don't really know why the Kakari left him that much. We knew it was sometime around the time Vonda, when he decided not to save Vonda. Mm-hmm. Now we know why Durzo was so stern about Kylar not loving anyone. But because Durzo, so this is interesting. So because Durzo loved Kylar, he hadn't loved anybody in many years, like leading up to the Kakari leaving him. But because he loved Kylar, he was given a new life.
Yeah.
And if he hadn't loved Kylar like a son, he wouldn't have gotten that new life. He was only given that because of the relationship he had with Kylar. And then the wolf kind of explains that at the very heart of magic is love. No one really knows why. It's kind of one of the great mysteries of the world that kind of binds everything together. And that's how the Kakari runs. It also mentioned, the wolf also mentioned that the Kakari work on human truths, whether it be beauty and passion and yearning and fortitude. And these all kind of work together with the magic that they're imbued with. And then we see the darker side of those things, like the Veer and stuff, those are run on greed and lust and pain and some of the darker human truths. And so it's kind of interesting to find out that all this magic is tied to human emotions, which is, what we see throughout a lot of fantasy series like Dresden Files and stuff. And then body magic, Durzo explains this a little bit, and it looks like bodies naturally know what part goes where. When Durzo realized this, he was able to kind of change the instructions on how things, I guess, grow back or regrow. But the process takes somewhat significant amount of time. And then we also learn Durzo has had about 20 bodies he's used over the years. And he started using more and more bodies because these two paintings came up. He was in some nobleman's house and he saw two paintings of himself side by side. And he's standing there looking exactly like he is in the paintings. I thought that was really, really funny.
Yeah, I did too.
And then kind of the scarier side of that is he was saying that he's never changed his body into like a girl or an animal because he's afraid he'd get stuck that way. Because one time he was stuck for, I think, over a year as a guy without magic when he was trying to infiltrate the chantry. I thought that was pretty interesting, and I would love to hear these stories. Like I want to learn about him, like invading the chantry and some of these missions that he's gone on before. And then lastly, we learn a little bit about glamours. They're unpredictable, unnatural, and unappreciated. This is when Vi is kind of at the chantry and going to her classes and stuff. Vi has a great moment where they mention, let's see, how does this relate? One second.
Oh, is this the one where she's in the class and they were talking about sex glamour?
Yeah.
And the teacher was like, these glamours are so hard, to hold on to and to like complete. And Vi's like, really? I like do that all the time. And I like maintain them perfectly no matter what. And then she goes on to like explain like in very explicit terms, like her sex magic and about the guy like not being able to perform. And he's like, oh, on the rest. And everybody was just like, like mortified.
Yeah.
Like, what's going on here? Yeah, that was super funny.
And then the little girl says, teacher, what kind of mage is a courtesan?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, it's so funny. Yeah, it was interesting learning about that. And then we kind of learn about Trace and the white Kakari. I kind of wish this had been elaborated on a little bit more, because I would love to learn about these other Kakaris.
Yeah.
But I wrote Trace had used the white Kakari to so this is kind of how she became Callie. She had used the white Kakari to create an unstoppable glamour and compulsion, making these Caledorans like bow down before her. And then she was able to steal life force from them, putting it all into kind of a magical pool, which then became the Veer. So it's very, very complicated, but interesting nonetheless. But then she became, so again, going back to the whole reason all this stuff exists, because the Kakari runs on love, she becomes like this disembodied spirit, because she has no love in her. And so she had to find a willing participant who loved honestly in order to take her body, which ended up being Aline.
Yep.
All right, let's
well, hold on. There's one more form of magic that we learned a lot more about, and that's the Krull. The Krull, or however you say that.
Yes.
And so kind of learning about them and their hierarchy, and is it the law of 13s or is it 7s?
Yes, I totally forgot to make a note about this.
Yeah.
They
go ahead.
Oh no, you can do it. Yeah, it's the law of 13s.
Yep. And so learning that, it's like, and again, I kind of forget how it goes, but it's not every 13, right? Like you get like 13, then you have to have another Krull that controls them, and you get like 1300, and then like whatever, until you get to like the king of Krull, right? Who's like the demon or something lord. And so that was super interesting. And then also, just a little side note, Black Barrow, basically was sealed up by either Ezra or Jorson Alcestis, right?
Yeah.
And it was like basically the like land of the dead. And so then once that's like unbinded, thanks to Neftata, we kind of see that like the super old weave and old binding that Neftata finally destroys. And of course we get the Titan, and then we also get the Krull that could come back to life now.
Yeah, that was wild. What did you think of our army of baddies in this book, Sam? We had the Ferali, the last book, and now we got the Krull.
And the Titan.
Like more of it almost. I felt like it could have been like its own book based off of just that stuff. I wanted more because I really wanted to know, like, once you got to the final, level, what was gonna, because I think he says at one point, like, has anyone ever reached, like the 13 of it? Like, what? And I was like, oh, that's what I want to know. I was like, I want more of that.
Right. Yeah.
But it was terrifying. I mean, they said that, like, you animate them, but you can't really control them other than the sense of like who you want them to kill.
Right.
And when we talked about how they tested the theory, like they would put them in a room with like a child or a woman to see, and like they always killed them every single time. So they like really weren't good for anything but destroying. And I think they said like you couldn't tell them who your people were versus the enemy. Like they were just going to kill regardless. So that was one of the most fascinating parts of the story for me. And I wanted more on it than we got, actually.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. And they won't even like help you build anything, even if it's like a weapon. They're just like, they're like really like overpowered zombies, like they're
zombies.
Yeah. And man, that Titan was so cool. It was like, I haven't seen Attack on Titan, but that's how I pictured it, as just like this giant tower.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Thing. That was absolutely wild. And I too am really interested in like what is at that top level, because
final boss.
For real.
Because at one of the levels, and I don't know if this is disproven by the end or not, but they found Callie on one of those levels after they went up the ranks and up the ranks and up the ranks. And so I'm interested what's above her, because by the end we do find out that she is not the master of these Krull. She is some sort of entity. She's some sort of ally to them. And then Ezra kind of mentions like this Dark Lord that is still at work, going back to kind of the religious themes, like, the one God and the Dark Lord. And he even mentions hell and stuff. And so I'd be really interested to, hopefully in the next books, we see kind of like this battle between heaven and hell, and kind of like this big conclusion. All right, so let's talk about some of the kind of standout characters in this book. Who is your favorite this read through, Sam?
That's a hard one, because like I don't know that there's like necessarily anyone like that I loved like individually. I mean, if you ask me who I hated, I would definitely have like a ton of answers on that one. But I don't know if that, I mean, I had issues with every character doing certain things. So there wasn't really anybody that I loved. I really like Vi. I like Vi. I think she's like probably the character, if I had to pick one that I liked the most, it would be her. Just because, she was thrown into such a bad situation. And I loved the duality of her versus Aline, and how they kind of both started the same, but like their trajectories were so different. So I found that really, really fascinating, with us getting so much more of Vi in this book. But yeah, other than that, I wouldn't say there was anyone that I like loved.
Okay. What about you, Gabe?
I would agree and say Vi for probably my favorite character. And another one that I really enjoyed his arc was Dorian.
Oh yeah.
Kind of his, kind of the corruption of the Veer, although it was like a corruption that like he thought was like for the better good. So it was like kind of this weird two-sided corruption thing. And so seeing that whole thing of him, becoming the God King and stuff was super interesting and disgusting at certain points, and kind of sad at certain points and whatnot. So between those two, probably Vi, but I really enjoyed his arc.
I would definitely agree. Vi is like one of my favorite characters.
It's your spirit animal,
all
dude.
Of fantasy. Yeah.
Vi is your spirit animal.
For sure. Yeah. Oh my God, she is so fantastic in this book. Just her entire arc is like nothing I've seen in any other book. She starts out in the first book kind of being this, I mean, we barely see her in the first book, but she's a wet boy, and she's there to kill Kyler, and she's, kind of under the rule of this guy, Hugh Gibbet. And she's just completely broken. Like, she can't have a relationship with anybody. She doesn't feel like any kind of connection with anybody. And then in the second book, Kyler kills Hugh Gibbet, and we start to see, and we see it way more in this book. We start to see that once she gets away from her like awful relationship with Hugh, she kind of changes and shows who she really is deep down. Because like deep down, she's not really like this terrible person. Like, she's not like this antagonist that we've kind of expected her to be. She's actually really compassionate and has the capacity for love for both like Kyler, Aline, Yuli, but she's never been shown any. So like she doesn't really know like what love is. So when she meets Kyler, it's kind of like this brand new thing for her, this brand new thing that she's experiencing for the very first time. And it's kind of interesting because it's like it kind of gets juxtaposed with, on one side, like she's very experienced in like a physical relationship and just like a purely sexual way. She's extremely experienced with that and very jaded and very cynical. But she's never had the opposite side of that coin. And so, it's just interesting to see somebody come into a relationship almost from the opposite way that most people do, I think. And so I just really, really, really love that arc. And of course, by the end, she does the most selfless thing that she can possibly do, basically saving the day. And so, yeah, I just love her. I think that she was written so well. I wouldn't want her written any other way. I think she was absolutely perfect.
I think it was interesting with her where it's almost like a nature versus nurture type thing where that was, what she'd been nurtured into her whole life by Hugh. And so then when she finally got the chance to like be her own master, it was like, oh, wow, I don't have to, default to all of these ways that I thought. I can kind of think for myself now. I can make my own decisions and it doesn't have to be, just jaded. I can explore these other feelings and all of that. So I think she had one of the most interesting character arcs from beginning to end, because she could have easily just, stayed in her lane, what she knew, what she had always been. And she said, no, like, I want more from my life. And I really loved that, when Ariel, makes it so every time she swears, her like mouth literally burns and stuff like that. Like that was one of my favorite scenes. I think in a lot of the books, because I have a potty mouth. So I was like, well, that had been done to me. Like, oh my God, my mouth was burning all the time.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I think her whole arc is really a perfect, showing of nature versus nurture, and, sticking with what, or, deciding you want more out of your life. So yeah, I really enjoyed her overall arc throughout the whole thing.
One of the things I just want to point out about Vi really quick too are the scenes. Like, so obviously when she ringed Kylar, she was aware of what that meant and how truly awful that was to both Aline and her. And I think throughout the story, like the time, where she's getting her compulsion, I can't remember if this was this book or the last one, but she's getting her compulsion, trying to get it removed by the two mages that had the healing hut or whatever you want to call it. And Kylar comes in and she basically like cures my sword, like, do with me as you wish. Like, I've wronged you in a way, I can't repent from this. Like, you do as you wish. And then she does it again to Aline. And she's just like so very like accepting of her part and just willing to do anything to rectify it. And I thought that was really cool.
You didn't think like, at the same time, like it was unfair to her though, because didn't she think she was saving his life by doing it? Like it was either
for sure. Yeah. No, absolutely.
I understood why people were upset, but I was like, I feel like you're being hard on her. Like she thought like it was life or death. Like he wasn't.
So
but Aline doesn't know that exactly. Yeah. She knows that it was for the betterment of Scenaria, but she doesn't either way. It's kind of like, I mean, whether it's for the better of Scenaria or not, like it's still like she just took away everything that Aline was hoping to have with Kylar. Like it literally ruined their lives. Like if Aline hadn't died later on in the story, it would have been like that forever, unless Vi found some way to break the compulsion.
Well, so Sam, you were just talking about the scene where Kylar gets killed by the God King or whatever that thing is, right? And so she did know that he would come back to life, but she did think like she's the only way that I can stop this and kill the God King is by ringing him. Okay. And so she did. She did save the day there, and she didn't really have another choice.
Yeah. That's and so I looked at it. I was like, I understand the hurt, but I was like, I feel like everyone's like being a little hard on her, because then when they were like, oh, well, if people find out that you ringed him without like his permission,
ring rape, yeah.
Like, And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, it's a little harsh, but like, I get it. I kept trying to tell myself, Sam, like, what if somebody ringed your husband? Like, how would you feel? You'd be like,
and I
pissed.
And I totally agree with you. And I think the reason why I was so like just kind of elated to see like all these things from Vi was because of that, because it was really harsh on her, right?
Yeah.
And even that she sucked that down because she knew she did the thing that she had to do, and she was still willing to just kind of like drop it at everybody's feet. Well, at least, Kyler and Aline, and say, all right, like, I'm so sorry. Like, even though I did the right thing and I had to do what I had to do, I still understand the ramifications of what I did.
Right.
And then like, what she does. So like Kyler and Aline can be intimate and like,
for real. Exactly.
Yeah.
She goes
Let's
to the
talk
ends
about
of the
that.
earth to make them comfortable and to make her bad better.
I was like, this poor girl, like, when is she gonna win? Like, when is she
yeah,
win? Please, like,
sure.
I need something for her.
Yep.
Yeah, it really, this book, especially everything that happened kind of at the Chantry around that time, like, it really endears you to Vi.
Mm-hmm.
And just the way, we talked about the way that she goes to Aline and she's like, I am at your disposal completely. And Aline even has a knife, I think. And she's like,
hands it to her.
Yeah. And she's holding this knife and trying to decide. And then when she finds out what she can do to allow them to have sex, like, in order to go through that, like this is a full like redemption arc. Like, this is a full, like, from where she was in the first book to her being so selfless. And it really comes from, I think a lot of it comes from her love of Kyler, because now that she is so in tune with him through this bond, she knows like what this means. Like, she knows like on a legitimate level, like what this means to them. And so I think that did a lot to kind of change her character and to be because Kyler is kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. Like, he's all intimacy, right? Like, he's all like love.
On this, you said it perfectly. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you did say it somewhere where the intimacy versus love.
Oh, yeah. Where is that? Let's see.
Oh, you said Vi also notices that as she was raped, she lost all intimacy and was left with only sex. And Kyler was robbed of sex and left with only intimacy. And I was like, wow, it would never have come up with that on my own. So that was really eye-opening when I read your notes. I was like, that's so true. I never would have thought of it that way.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah, they're completely opposite ends of the spectrum, because like Vi is robbed of intimacy, and because of what Vi did, Kyler is robbed of the physical act. And it's just there's such like a perfect kind of yin and yang, and they kind of fill in what the other person doesn't have. And so, Kyler, I mean, even since the first book, he's been all about love. Like, he's loved doll girl Aline from the very beginning. And so she's kind of learning about love through this bond with him. And, obviously is a huge, huge theme in this book. But I just thought that was really cool how like neither of them would be able to get to where they ended up without each other. And really, like, as far as the romance goes, like, as much as this is a story about Aline and Kyler, this is also like a story about Kyler finally getting to Vi. Like, I love the way that worked out. And speaking of which, what did you think of the love triangle here, Sam? We talked about this last time, and I was like, I think, it's a little bit different than how most books do it. Did you feel that way, or am I?
Yeah, and like I actually, like, because of all the like thought processes I had to go through with it, I actually think like it was a great plot to do, because like, it wasn't just brushed over, and I thought about it a lot more, and I really wanted Kyler to be with Vi. Like, that's what I really, really wanted. So in the beginning, I really didn't like Aline, because it was kind of that trope of like, oh, like this young love that they can never let go of. And I'm like, kind of like, just like, oh, grow up. Like, like how many young people, that fall in love at 10 or however old they were, it's not going to work out in the end. And so I felt at first, I thought like, oh, it's holding the story back because he's like tied to this girl that, he loved since he was a kid. And here's Vi, someone that I think could really understand him, because we had to go through the whole story with Eileen, not understanding who and what he was. And until she had to kill someone herself, then it was like, oh, now I get it.
I get it.
Not like bothers me,
right.
Like, you should have been able to like look past yourself, put yourself in someone else's shoes, and understood his circumstances and what brought him to have to do what he has to do.
Right.
And just be glad you're not the one that has to be doing it. And Vi really could understand that side of Kyler without, having to go through it on her own necessarily. So I wanted to hate it, but I actually really enjoyed it in the end because there was just so many layers to it. And it just kept building and building throughout it. And there was really no like stagnant, boring part to that love triangle, because if I was reading about Vi, I was on her side. But then when it was Eileen, it was like, okay, now I can see where she's coming from. I get it. He's been her savior. That's why she's so in love with him.
Right.
So I actually really enjoyed it more than I thought I would. I thought I was going to be more annoyed by the whole triangle, like, okay, pick a side, choose one. But I think it made sense right up until the very end with where the arc ended. So I really enjoyed it.
I'm curious what you guys think of Eileen's arc, because in the first and most of the second book, she was kind of blah, and she just wasn't really there that much. How do you guys feel about kind of where she ended up and the sacrifices that she made and kind of the realizations that she had by the end?
Yeah, for sure. She definitely grew a lot. And I think that started, and again, I'm pretty sure this is in the last book, but I think where it started is when she went, she left Trey Ethel or wherever they were after Kyler, or after what's his name?
Jarl died.
After Jarl died, exactly. And when she had to kill that Caladoran, right? And I think that's when she finally realized like kind of a different way of thinking about things. And then from there on out, like she's very, and mind you, she's like the epitome of faith, right? In God and in her God. And so seeing kind of more,
religious,
correlations and stuff with that, and her forgiveness and stuff. And I think towards the end, she was the most moral and right character in the whole entire book,
which is crazy because you think of like, her getting mutilated in the beginning. Anybody should be jaded.
For sure. Absolutely. Yeah. And so, I enjoyed her arc a lot. And I thought, there was a lot of strength that she has that most people in the book do not have. And, in her
that
own,
Kyler didn't even have.
Yeah, exactly. And in her own way, that was just like almost overpowering in a good way.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was like the perfect arc for her where, it's this naive, kind of ignorant little girl in the beginning. And as much as I didn't necessarily like her in the beginning, it makes sense for her overall arc that, she was just kind of wanted to cover her eyes to the realities of the world. And that just annoyed the crap out of me. It was just like,
for sure.
You grew up in like the slums. Like, I don't see why you have your head in the clouds. Like, open your eyes to the realities of how your world works and like some ugly truths that need to happen to survive.
Right.
So I thought it was great, the way that it worked and how she didn't in the end hold like, everything against Vi for what she did with the rings. And at the end, how she wanted, Vi and Kyler to be together. Like, I really liked that. So I thought her arc overall really was great because I ended up liking her in the end when I really didn't like her in the first two books. I don't think
100%. Yeah. I think that I really liked the realization that she had at the end. It kind of talks about this at the very end where, before at the beginning of the second book, she was kind of more just like infatuated with Kyler. Like she didn't really know what kind of person he was. And then after the events of, after she had to kill that Caladoran, like Gabe said, she had to like understand him more. She came to understand him more.
Yeah.
And part of that was not only understanding that not only understanding like his strengths, but also understanding his faults. She knew that Kyler like wouldn't have the strength to just allow her to do the things she did with Callie. And so she knew that he would continually try to keep saving her. So she put both of them in a position where there was no way out. And because she knew that he wouldn't be able to do it, that he wasn't strong enough to do it. And so, but she also knew that in the end, he would, make the right decision. She knew that there was goodness in him, and that, standing in a room full of their loved ones, he would make the right call to kill her with Kurok. And that's like a super, super emotional scene.
Yeah.
But I also really like how, she kind of comes to a conclusion on her, not conclusion, but a final resolution on her relationship with Vi, and how they, their whole problem that they have going on. Because how do I say this? Like, she forgives Vi, first of all. Like, she's like, as much as it hurts me, like, I understand, I forgive you. And we talked about that. But also she's like, when she finds out, who tells her that she's going to die? I think Dorian or somebody told her that she's the next one to die, maybe. Or no, was it the wolf? Did the wolf visit her in a dream?
Oh man, I can't remember. I don't really remember the wolf thing. Dorian is plausible, but I forgot.
So somehow she gets told that she's the next one to die. She understands.
Kyler tells her.
No, because she knew before that, because he goes to tell her, and she's like, I know everything. Like, I know what the Kakari costs. I know what is coming next. Like, I understand all this.
Dream then, right? I feel
it was something in a dream, but I can't remember if it was Dorian or the wolf or somebody.
Interesting.
Her relationship to Vi. So then she kind of comes to this final, like, I guess, resolution with Vi. She's like, I want you to take care of him when I die. Like, I want you, like, the thing that you guys want to have right now because of the ringing, I want you guys to have that when I'm gone. Like, yeah. I want you to take care of him and be there for him. And I want him to be there for you. And I want you guys to be together. And so kind of giving that her blessing is just the ultimate, like, just like selfless act.
Yeah.
And I did, as much as Aline, like, isn't my favorite character, I did really, really like that arc.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's talk about
You know what we didn't talk about was Dorian and Janine.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's talk about Dorian and Janine.
Yep.
So we talked a little bit about his corruption arc, and this is an interesting one because this is an example of somebody wanting to do the right thing. They have a good idea, but just going about it in a bad way, like using power in a way that, trying to take this evil power and say, well, I need to use it a little bit in order to get to the place where this will finally be a good country. And part of the problem was that Calidor is like a snowball. You know what I mean? Like, it's been rolling downhill for a long time. And by now it's a big ass snowball that you can't stop very easily. And so there's already all this culture and stuff that is already there that he has to work around, otherwise he'll be dethroned. So he has to show like signs of power. Like he has to show that he has this harem, whether he's using it or not. He has to show that he has this. Otherwise, people will be like, "Oh, he's not a god king," or whatever,
Yeah.
And so, what did you guys think about kind of this slow decline and all of the little decisions that he made that got him to where he was in the end?
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much nailed it on the head. He had the right moral standing, but he was just going about it in a way that was self-destructive. And I think he knew that, right? He knows that using the veer is, there's even times like where some inner monologue happens, like where he knows he's like, this is getting dangerous, like
yeah,
I'm getting closer to the edge and stuff. And so that, and then the actions that, and again, so the people of Kalador have been ruled by a vicious king for forever. Like
right.
that's what they are used to. That's what they know, the only thing that they know, and that's how their society is. And so he went into that knowing that like he had to, basically uphold kind of this vicious thing, and he would battle like, how vicious can I get, or how much. And some of the things he did, like basically raping that 13-year-old girl, like stuff, a bunch of stuff like that was like, that is so dark and like so nasty. And he's just over there like, better for the better. I got to do this. And it's like, man, you're way further past, the point where this was okay. And so it was, to me, it was like really bad. Like it didn't seem that bad, but it was like an awful downhill spiral for him.
Yeah.
And eventually, of course, at the end, like he finally realizes what needs to be done, even though he already did all this messed up stuff. That's when he like burned the veer out of him and was able to basically save the day with this insane amount of magic that he used.
Yeah.
But yeah.
What'd you think, Sam?
I mean, I thought like the beginning of his end was like when he first starts talking to Janine about why he's going to need like the harem, and that was like the first kind of like, oh, all right, like here's where the real world starts to break apart this fantasy life that you had built in your head for you and Janine, and you being the king and she would be your wife, and now the realities of what precedents your father had set are coming to life. And I mean, when they talked about, what his father had done, I was mortified. And I think they say, his people are used to being told what to do. And if you're not just like ordering people and commanding people around, like they only know how to like obey commands. And I was like, that's tough. And there's no way you can step into those shoes without also doing a lot of the things that he did.
Yeah. And
can you like reconcile that in your head? Can you still be good while doing all of these terrible things? And I think that came to light really, really quick for him. And I didn't love him and Janine's love story to begin with. I thought it was weird. And
you didn't like it?
I didn't. And I thought like their scene in bed together was really awkward and like forced, I guess would be the best way to say it. I think Janine was confused. She was grateful from being saved by him, but I think she was trying to force herself to love him.
Right.
Because of the situation and circumstances she was in. But yeah, I mean, with who his father was and the role that he was, kind of thrust into essentially, I didn't think there was any really good way out for him to begin with. So I'm really not surprised it ended the way that it did.
Yeah, it's really sad because, in the first two books, we get all these prophecies about how him and Janine will be together and they'll be so in love, and like you're just ready for like this epic love story, right? And especially from his end, like he's spent years and years and years in his head reliving this like happy marriage with this person, and then for it to come to reality and something somewhere along the way went wrong and it didn't end up how he saw it in his visions. And it's just really, really sad. Like every time I read this, I almost kind of cheer for Dorian and Janine when they start at the very beginning, when they start getting together.
Yeah.
Because I've never been a huge like Janine and Logan kind of person. Like, I thought it was kind of sad when Logan has to give up Sierra to marry Janine. Janine wasn't the person he wanted to marry. And like they ended up falling in love, and that's great and everything. But I just never, when Janine finally found Dorian, it's kind of like this faded love story, and it's kind of very romanticized. And so for it to just go downhill is so sad. I feel bad for both of them every single time, because she's in a position where, even one of her last scenes with Dorian in the book is she's like, I think I made a mistake. Like, I don't think I'm supposed to be here. And he's like, well, what about what we're doing for Calidor and all this stuff? She's like, look, she's like, I love you. Like, in many ways, I do love you, but it's not the same as it was with Logan. And she's like, I don't know if I was just like a young girl and I was just infatuated with him, or maybe an older woman's love is different than a younger woman's love. And she's like, I don't know if it's that or what, but I'm trying, but I don't feel the same. And so it's just really, really sad to see that spiral. What do you guys think about Janine specifically in relation to Dorian's corruption arc? I was listening to another podcast recently, a couple days ago, and they made me think of something. They're like, Janine is kind of an enabler.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I think you have to look at like the position she was thrust into, though. She thought all her dreams were coming true when she got to marry Logan. And I think she says at one point to Logan, like, I never thought I would get to marry for love or to be with like a kind person, something like that. And she thought she had it made. And then, everything was ripped and torn away from her. And so I think she was really just trying to make the best of the situation that she ended up in. And I can't really fault her for that. Sure. She had this guy declaring his love for her, and he had saved her from, being locked up and all of that. And so I think she was really just trying to make the best of the situation that she was in. And when she started to see the cracks and the flaws in him, I think she just kind of did the best that she could. I tried to put myself in her shoes and think of all she had been through and how would I have changed it. And I don't know what other options she really had at the time.
Well, the scene that comes to mind is this one where she kind of okays his bad decisions along the way, and like kind of makes not only makes excuses for them, but she's like, oh yeah, that probably is a good idea because of this and this. And so like when he takes her to see the Kroll, when the guy is like, I have all these bones to show you and stuff. And Dorian is looking at him. He's like, oh my God, I should not do anything with these. And then they learn about the invaders. What was the brother? Starts with an M. Morboru or something.
Oh yeah, Moboru. Yep.
And then they learn that he is going to be invading with his army. Dorian's like, oh my God, like what choice do I have but to raise these Kroll? And the quote is, or Dorian says, there's no way to win except by raising these monsters. And then Janine says, so then let us raise monsters. Yeah. And so she's like, kind of like okaying this as it's going on. And it's like, oh my God. And then of course, with the harem thing, he's like, I will never take any of them to my bed and like all this stuff. And she's like, oh, Dorian, like, don't make promises you can't keep and stuff. Yeah. And kind of okays this whole harem thing. And so I think it's really interesting how they kind of just feed off of each other in a lot of ways. But Janine, also something I really appreciated about her is in other moments, not necessarily the enabling moments, but there's other moments where she's shown to be a very like intelligent and like respectful, I guess, queen.
Yeah.
Like you can tell through her early interactions with Dorian that she is going to make a good queen. Like there's even that one scene where Dorian is stuck in one of his prophecies in the tent, and the other guy comes in and he's like, I need to speak to Dorian. She's like, you can speak to me.
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't usually report to. She's like, do you have problems reporting to a queen? Like, you know, I'm part of the royalty now, bitch. Like, and so I loved those kind of moments where it's like, okay, yeah, she's gonna make a good queen.
Yeah. I thought she would maybe be better with Logan though, you know, like they both had very similar personalities in that sense.
Yeah.
They had Dorian and Janine had the scene that made me laugh out loud the most was when he's still half man and he's like first going to see her.
Oh my God. Yes.
Tower, and he's like, how do I tell her I have a penis without telling her?
Yeah.
I thought that was one of the funniest lines in the whole book. I was like, of course, that's what he's worried about. Like, I need to my manhood. But that was like one of the funniest scenes I thought out of the whole book. It literally made me laugh out loud.
For sure. Yeah, I think he said something like, what was it? It was like, he tells her like, well, if I can convince one of the guards or whatever that I'm a eunuch, then I can do this other thing. And then like in his head, he's like, I hope that was subtle enough.
Yeah. I hope she understood what I meant.
Yeah. Let's see. I really like this quote that kind of goes along with their relationship. It was like right after they had sex or something. And the quote is, he lay next to her trying not to feel lonely.
Yeah.
Cause she just isn't there. Like, you know, she just isn't like, she's not there mentally.
That scene was sad.
It was sad. I agree.
That whole scene, I was like, oh, like she's trying, but she's not really into it.
Yeah. Right.
Make herself like feel things that she's just not feeling on naturally.
Right. I thought there was kind of a really good like allegory or metaphor for Dorian's future and relationship with Janine. Do you guys remember this scene where he tries to wrap a flower, or it's a flower that's grown by the veer, and he tries to wrap it in a weave to preserve it for her, but it darkens and wilts because the two magics, like they just don't work well together. And so then, and that's kind of showing that if the flower is representing her, she's kind of caught in the middle by these two things between, you know, this is before Dorian makes any like final decisions on whether he's going to be bad or good. And it's kind of this idea of if the magical weave represents goodness and the veer represents evil, like she's kind of caught in the middle, this flower that is, you know, there's veer and weaves on both sides and it ruins the flower. And so I thought that was just a really, really interesting one. But then he picks another flower, choosing to wrap it in the veer, but it won't stay that way like it would with the weave. Like it'll wilt in a couple days. Upon which time he'll simply pick another flower, which is not like, if we're going with the relationship metaphor here, like that's not a great template for our relationship. Like, oh, I'll just pick a new one the next day, you know, like working within this allegory. And so I just love the way that kind of encapsulated their relationship, I guess, just like this tug of war between like Dorian warring with these two sides of him is going to ruin Janine, basically.
Yeah, for sure.
See, and that went over my head. Like it went over my head and at first, you know, because it didn't make sense to me until the end. And I was like, oh, wow, like he's trying to tell her one thing and it's coming out in my opinion, as like the complete opposite of what he was trying to tell her.
Yeah.
He was trying to tell her this like nice, in his mind, like beautiful thing. And I was like, I feel like that's not like how that really would have come across to me if I was sitting there and you were saying that to me. I'd be like, but simply pick another. So you're saying if this doesn't work out, then you can just go find another girl. Okay. Was that supposed to make me feel good? Because it definitely did the opposite. But you're right. It was really just like, you know, foreshadowing for what was going to come in the future.
For sure. All right, Sam, your moment is now. Let's talk about Durzo. You were so excited to find Durzo again in this book.
And I was really caught off guard by how he was brought back. I like did an immediate like rewind of like a minute because I was like, wait, it came out of nowhere when he was fighting with
Vi,
right? Yeah. And then she's like, wait, Durzo? And she says like, oh, it's because you move or you fight like Kyler. And I was just wait, what? Like I had to go back. I was like, I totally did not see that coming. And I liked that it was like Durzo's test for her on if he should kill her or not for ringing Kyler. I thought that was really interesting. It didn't just like bring him back for no reason. It brought it back in like a meaningful way. And you know, I think Vi's put to a lot of tests throughout the whole series, and she does, I think she did really well with it. So I was really excited that he was brought back and in a way that I didn't see coming at all. Even though now, like, you know, hindsight, I'm like, oh, I should have seen that, you know, like he can change how he looks. Like I should have been prepared for that, but I guess it had gone over my head, but I loved it. I was really excited.
I'm so glad that that like wasn't spoiled for you or anything, because the first time I read it, I remember because we get introduced to Devi at the end of the second book when he saves Eileen, and that was like the first time he showed up. And so I remember like I was like, what's this random character? And then you know, we see him more in the second book, and then when you find out it's Durzo, it's like, oh my god, like it's so cool. What did we think about his storyline in general in this book?
We needed more. More. I need a whole Durzo series on its own. Like, I need all of his past lives, all of his, you know, the huge like heroes that he was in the past, and you know how he said they talk about it at one point where it's like, you know, he had tried to live boring lives, and every time like he kept getting called back to do something big and powerful. And I could have done with so much more Durzo in it. I could have done with so much. I could do with his own series. I don't think I could get enough of him.
For sure. Yeah, 100%. I kind of liked how we learned that the reason why he is like this super talented fighter or warrior or assassin or whatever is because he figured that if he became the perfect killer, he would avoid dying. So it would avoid the deaths of his friends and family and stuff. And so I thought that was kind of cool that it gave a narrative explanation as to why he's like this fantastic killer. So I had some stuff. I got chapter 61 here. Let me see if there was anything I really wanted to talk about.
We didn't talk about like the wolf. I was a little confused on the wolf's whole thing. Was that in the 60s? The 60 chapters?
Like who the wolf was?
Well, it came out that he was Ezra, but I was like just kind of a little confused by, I think I missed like the reference earlier on where like what Ezra should have meant to me when I found out about it.
So Ezra is the person who made the Kakaris.
Okay.
And he was part of that friend group with like Jorson, Akela Thorne, Trace, all of them. And so he found the Black Kakari, because the black Kakari is older than everything else.
Yeah.
And then he made the white Kakari, blue Kakari, silver Kakari, all those. And then he gave the white Kakari to Trace, which made Durzo mad because like she was already thinking that she was like this ugly person, and the white Kakari made her like even more beautiful. And so Durzo was like, you're just reinforcing this like negative idea that she has about herself, because they were in love. And so that's why Durzo and the wolf kind of have this like opposing relationship in some ways.
Okay.
But yeah, otherwise he's like one of the most powerful mages to have ever lived. Did you guys understand what the hunter in the woods was?
Yeah. I mean, he said it was his hubris, right? I mean, it was like
his
like a
alter.
ramification
Yeah.
of everything he had done. Okay.
Yeah, it's like a almost like an alter ego or like split personality kind of thing. Like it kind of is him and kind of is like a split off, like a magical split off from him. Like that's kind of taken its own form. And so it's like the darker side of him, and it just hunts anything magic related.
I feel like I could have like done with more of that. Like I wanted to know more about the wood, you know?
Yeah, for sure. So what last episode you mentioned that Mama K was one of your favorite characters. Did you like where she ended up in this book?
I did, but I felt like she was left off till like the end. Like she didn't really come in much till the last almost like quarter of the book, really. At least I feel like she didn't really have many chapters from her point of view until the end. But I could have done with more of her. I could have had more of Mama K, because she was one of my favorites, and I honestly kind of forgot about her in this book until we got to the end.
Right. Yeah.
I thought she had a great redemption in the end, and I liked that everything she had worked she'd worked so hard her whole life. She finally got something good in the end.
Right.
But yeah, I don't think we got enough of her.
I would agree. I did like how she kind of teamed up with Logan to, either take down the Sakage or turn it into like what it's meant to be. And let's see, I think their efforts, instead of taking down the Sakage, instead of it being led by Mama K, he was going to have it being led by Count Drake. And so they kind of have this whole new team that is working on taking out the corruption in the city, which is an interesting turn of events for Mama K. And then he makes her a duchess of House Karena. And then at the end, the wolf tells Kyler that she will become the ruler of Scenaria.
And then she will do it better than anybody before her. Like he says that she'll do it such a good job at it, which makes sense.
Exactly. And, my note here says, I wonder what happens to Logan if she takes over Scenaria. But then I remember Logan is like the king of everything at this point. Yeah,
he's the High King now.
And so I wonder if she would like rule under him. To rule over Scenaria under the High King.
Yeah, that's the way that I interpreted it, and
that makes sense. I really liked this passage where it's not like Mama K's like final thing in this book or anything, but it really kind of goes over some of the things that she's achieved in this book. And Kyler says, or it's Kyler's POV, and he's thinking, there was something about the way she said we ended slavery. She didn't mean we as in we Scenaria. If she had become Shinga around the time Count Drake left the Sakage, that meant she'd either been part of the abolition movement or she had decided not to oppose it despite the enormous profits it made for the Sakage. She had to be part of the reason Count Drake's enemies hadn't killed him. Kyler wondered at her, this woman who had taught him to read, who had championed him to Durzo, who had helped end slavery and gave the guild rats a safe place to stay in the winter. At the same time, she had ordered dozens or even hundreds of kills. She had bribed magistrates, established dens of gambling and prostitution and riot weed, extorted honest shopkeepers, sprung crooks from Gale, crushed her competitors by every means, and enriched herself every step of the way. She was a fearsome woman indeed. Kyler was glad that she'd always liked him. I was like, that's just a great way to, like, you know, kind of explain, like, just a wrap up on who she is and what kind of person she is. I really like that.
For sure.
All right. Any other characters before we move on to favorite moments and stuff?
I think we covered most. Did we talk about Logan?
I was just gonna say,
no, we didn't talk about Logan.
I don't think we talked about that at all.
Yeah.
Screw Tara, dude.
Yeah. Screw Tara.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what, but let's talk about Logan and Kyler's relationship journey, either throughout the trilogy or through this book. And I just realized one of my notes here is wrong because Logan does realize that Kyler lived. But what do you guys think about everything that happened between Logan and Kyler in this book? There was a lot of heavy stuff between the two of them.
A lot of heavy stuff. So, I mean, Logan, you know, basically submitted himself to Tara, right? Because it was the only way to kind of appease her and also, you know, save Scenaria, basically. And of course, Tara, being Tara, you know, tries to kill him off. She has people hired and this and that. And Logan is adamant. He's like, I will not, because Kyler wants to just kill her and have done, right? Then he can be king. Right. And Logan's like, you will not do that. I forbid it. It is, you know, a matter of honor. And I couldn't, you know, live with myself if you were to do that. And then maybe you have this quote. Kyler says something. He's like, he either says like, do you know how much I love you, Logan? And that was before he went and
he walks away, I think, right?
Yeah,
like,
exactly. And of course, you know, we know that he's going to take care of Tara and whatnot. And so him doing that, you know, Logan is forced, you know, to again kind of submit to the way that Scenario works and, you know, kill him, right?
Yeah.
And I think that was a huge moment in their relationship because Kyler, no matter what Logan said, he was going to do what needed to be done, which was kill Tara. Right. And then the opposite end of the spectrum is Logan having to stand up for this. And did Logan know that he was going to come back? No, he didn't.
No, he doesn't. Yeah, he doesn't know. He finds out in the very end. Vi even tells him in the tent with Solon and everything, like Kyler's coming back and he's coming after Aline. Yeah. And Logan's just like, you know, cuckoo, like, like you're crazy.
Yep.
But I really liked how so Logan knows that Kyler is on this like destructive path that he's, well, I mean, not really I mean, he knows that he's gonna kill Tara Grayson, and he knows that he will have to kill Kyler if he does this, right? And so so he makes him a Marquis and like brings him into like the family of royalty.
Yeah.
And I just love this scene where he's like, it's just his last ditch effort to get Kyler to come back and to be like, please don't do this. Like, you can live the rest of your life in comfort with the people that you love by your side. Like, please just don't do this. And Kyler goes ahead with it anyways. And so I just love that showing from Logan. And then of course he even tries to spring him out when Kyler is in jail. He sends Scarred Rabble to spring him out. What did you think of their kind of journey in this book, Sam?
I found Logan to be honestly one of the most frustrating characters because
yeah,
when people get on this like moral high horse, and it was just frustrating because it's like you don't want to get your hands dirty. You want to keep your conscience clean, but think of how many more people will suffer under Tara's rule. Like, so who are you really helping here? And that's just what frustrated me. And I found it was like this reoccurring theme where it's like, you're going to make everyone else do the dirty work because you refuse to do it yourself for everyone to have like this more peaceful, better world. And Tyler made like the ultimate sacrifice for him in so many ways with, first of all, I did not see Tara sleeping with her like brother.
Oh yeah, that was wild.
I did not see that coming. And then when the brother goes to kill her after they had like the song commissioned,
oh yeah, the song. That's right.
Who had the song commissioned again? Was it
Mama K? Yeah,
Mama K did. And so like that had set off, the dominoes of what was going to happen. And then Kyler takes the fall for it. And I don't know, it just frustrated me from beginning to end because it was like, Logan, if you had just like manned up and done this, like we wouldn't have had to go through all of this.
Right.
Yeah.
So
anything else about Logan? He's got this tattoo, and the whole I even forgot what the tattoo did, the dragon mark on his arm. And even this read through, I was like, does that ever have any relevance to the story at all? Like this mark. And then at the end it breaks apart the veer. It was kind of a cool little bit of payoff, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it was a prophecy that's been around, right? And Muburu had painted this green tattoo on his arm. Yeah, that was a badass moment, by the way.
That was awesome.
When Logan gets ready, and all of a sudden, this like his tattoo comes alive and just fucking wrecks Muburu. Like Dragon comes out and chomps the dude out of his eye. I was like, that was cool.
100%. It like breaks apart the veer, and then Logan comes in with his sword. And yeah, that was awesome. Okay, so we're about at 2 hours. So let's maybe go through just some of our favorite moments real quick.
Okay.
And like I said, if it gets too late, please let me know and we'll be sure to wrap it up. But what are some of your favorite, most memorable moments from this book that we either haven't talked about or didn't talk about enough?
So there's a scene we were kind of just talking about. This is when Kyler's imprisoned after killing Tara, and a couple of guards, come down and let themselves in and are talking to him, and there's a guard that's like, striking him, right, like hitting him, and Kyler very calmly says, "Do not strike me again." And that's all he says. And then he hits him again, and Kyler goes invisible, locks them all in there, and gets out. And he's like, I could leave whenever I want. And then he looks to the captain, "Will you please tell your man to quit striking me?" And the captain's like, of course, sir, absolutely. And I was like, man, that is super cool display of power.
Yeah.
But it's also a super cool scene where, Kyler is just committed to he's committed to helping Logan, because that's all it is. Like, he loves Logan, and he's like, I have to fall through with this for Logan, because otherwise he wouldn't give a shit. He'd just leave. And he's there not because he has to be there. He's there because he knows that that if he's not punished for it, then Logan will look like he lets his friends off of. Exactly.
Well, because then I think they go up to like the throne room or whatever, and it's like the same thing starts to happen again, and he like looks over at the guards, like, you guys know, like, because I want to be here, like, you're not keeping me here at all, and that really was great.
100%.
Because
and then even in that, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, when he was down there and they like offered to like, break him out, and he's like, no, like, I'm here because this is where I'm choosing to be, because everything will work out the best for Logan, and I just thought that was fascinating how much he was willing to do and give up for Logan.
Yep,
for sure. So this is the scene that you referenced earlier, Sam. I have here Kyler threatens Tara Grayson, and it's literally like a scene from Dexter where he's just wearing his mask and he's got this knife and he's just kind of toying with her and threatening her to I forget what he was even trying to do in that scene, but he's just like it reminded me of just something Dexter would do. Have you watched Dexter, Sam?
Love Dexter. I've not watched the new reboot yet, though.
It's so good.
Yeah.
It's so good. But like when Dexter has somebody on his table and he gets right up in their face and he's got like their knife on their face and like just dragging it down like that. That just gave me huge Dexter vibes in this scene where Kyler just has his he has like his needle sharp like little dagger or whatever. Or no, it's he grabs a bobby pin, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's what's a pin.
Yeah.
I thought it was great though, because at first he like threatens her and then she thinks she like has the upper hand again out of nowhere. And he's like, oh no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're confused. That's not how this is gonna go. And then he like jabs in, he's like twisting it back and forth. And I loved that because I was like, finally, she's like getting something. And then I was a little upset though that he just didn't kill her. I was like, just kill her. But you know, she's got to be the antagonist of the there has to be someone. So like I understood it, but I still really want her to die.
For sure. All right, can we talk about the wheel that Kyler gets put on?
Sure.
Oh my god, this scene, how brutal was this?
Yeah.
So it's of course the wheel in the river with a spike on every side of it. And every time it turns Kyler, gravity brings him down onto whatever spike is lowest. So he's just getting punctured through every side of his body.
Yep.
And this is like some medieval torture shit that we see in like museums and stuff.
It's barbarous, man, for sure.
But of course he heals so quickly that he's just up there for days.
Well, so Vi is the reason why he's up there so long. Because she's taking all the pain and everything from him through the bond, like the pain and whatever. At least that's somebody says that. I think it's Sister Ariel says that, you know.
Yeah.
And then why did they take him down though? I didn't understand that part. To me, it felt like they were just prolonging the pain for him. When he gets that break. Doesn't he get a break? They like secretly take him down at one point.
Oh, so the order of the first something comes and takes him down from like, you know, dawn until dusk, right? And then and that's when we see, what's the guy's name?
Aristarchus
is over and, you know, gives him a wave, and I'm like, that's gonna come into play in the next book.
Sure. Yeah, we find out that he's back with his family.
Yep.
At home. He's gotten clean from his riot weed or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Vi was taking his pain, but the Kakari heals him.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's just up there. The Kakari is like perpetually healing him, and he's just getting stabbed and it's not letting him heal. But that was that was probably like one of my favorite scenes with Vi, where, you know, he goes back into like his kind of like dreamscape, and she's there and she's like, what are they doing to you? And he's just like, he's like laying there like on her lap, and she like takes his pain and like makes it her own. So like she's feeling what he's feeling and kind of taking a little bit of that from him. I loved how much she loved Kylar. I love that so much.
Because they say at one part, like, you've been on there for like a day or days, but it's like you've only been on there an hour with faster healing. And I was like, ooh, that really sucks.
and Logan, dude, I love this scene with Logan near the end of it, where the Lee Knott ambassador comes in, and he's like meeting with him right in front of the wheel as Kyler is rotating, just showing the Lee Knott that they're not going to take any shit from them, that they're like brutal. And so then he goes over to Kyler. He's like, okay, it's been too long. And he flips the table, breaks a leg off of it, and then breaks both of Kyler's legs and I think his wrists or his shoulders or something. And then Kyler just immediately like slumps over onto the blades and dies.
That was intense.
Dude, that was just a brutal moment where Logan was like, everything with him and the Lee Knot was so funny because he just hated them so much. And at every opportunity, he was just like, no, like, fuck you guys.
Yeah, for real.
At the same time, like it seemed like they were doing this terrible thing, but like it really helped him because he wasn't going to be tortured on the wheel anymore, you know?
Right,
like
yeah.
he just done with it. So
yeah, it was a cruel mercy.
Exactly.
Let's see. Any other scenes you guys really, really liked?
Not that I can think
of. Yeah, I like the scene where Kyler rage monsters into the chantry and basically sloughs off like some of the most insane battle magic that has ever been wielded by a sister. Like it's nothing. Goes right up to the speaker. I know what you did. I thought that was cool, man. The build, the anticipation, right? When she was talking to whoever that guy was, you know, the speaker.
Yeah.
Was basically talking about the Accords or whatever.
Yeah.
And, you know, she feels this magic come in and she feels some magic get thwarted. And then she feels the chain magic that Sister Ariel, I think, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That she casts on him. And she's like, there's only one mage that I've ever known that could cast magic like that. And he just broke it like it was sand, you know. Yeah. And so I was like, that was cool. You know, Face of Judgment coming in hot right there. That was pretty badass.
Yeah. That's, their names in the audiobook were very similar. It's Ariel and
Esteriel.
Yeah.
Ariel. And so when I first was hearing them, I thought it was the same person.
Yeah.
And it took me a minute to realize it was two separate people because the names just sounded so familiar in it. But I thought it was really interesting how she said Ariel, you know, if she had really wanted it, she could have been, you know, in charge of everything.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the type of person that she was. And I thought she was like a fascinating character. Like I could have liked even more about, you know.
Yeah, for sure. And Kyler meets the Seraph in that scene too. We learned that the Seraph is actually a real entity. Real being. Yeah. And so I thought that was pretty interesting. And I forget the quote. Let's see, where's the quote that I have here? But the what I just call her, the Seraph. The Seraph says something interesting. She's like, oh, you are not the one. Because she, you know, some whatever fabled hero they're waiting for.
Yeah.
You know, Durzo thinks that Kyler is the end all be all Night Angel.
Yeah.
But the Seraph tells him you're not the one. And so maybe it's Kyler's son, you know? I don't know.
Could be.
Yeah. I think something's going to be big with the two boys.
Yeah.
The boys that are not born yet. I think that's where I see the next book going. It's what it was setting it up for.
Wouldn't it be interesting if Logan was like a descendant of Jorce and Alcestis? Because they seem like similar characters.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me.
I think that'd be kind of cool.
We didn't talk about, that was a really good scene at the end where they think they've killed Kyler, but it's really Durzo as Kyler.
Oh yeah. The fake out.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that was so good.
I agree.
That was so good. I was even in shock on that one. I was like, wow, I did not see that coming, but I should have seen it coming. It was such a great like fake out.
Yeah.
And not only that, he did his first instance of rapid healing or whatever that was, which I thought was cool. I was like, there's immortality right there. And it's
yeah.
Like that. I mean, come on.
There's immortality right there.
That last like hour.
So true.
So much happened that it was hard to, like even keep up or remember everything because just so much happened.
Yeah.
But that was great. I love that when they were like, well, you didn't kill Kyler. So guess what?
Mm-hmm.
I love in that scene where he's like, he like stands up and comes back to or what was it? Or one of them says, I've 3 things to tell you, Neff. And he like goes on to say like 4 things. He goes, shit, that's 4 things, isn't it?
Yeah.
I love that.
That's great though, because it's like the author writing it, and it's like he could have just said, "I have 4 things," but
Right.
he wrote it in this funny way. I was like, "Oh, I like that."
Exactly. Yeah. So I also really like this scene, or actually, I'm gonna springboard off what you just said. There's another fake out. What did you think of the scene where Kyler and Durzo are in the woods and Durzo like knocks him out or something to take the Kakari?
Yeah.
Were you like, oh my God, is Durzo going bad again? Or
Yeah, for like a split second, and then he was explaining it, and I had trouble understanding like what the reasoning behind it was. I understood that it was like for Kylar's own good, but that was another instance where I didn't understand the like magic element to it of like what it meant of what he did.
right. So they were going to get the original Sior Calestos that's out in Ezra's wood that Kyler threw in there.
Yeah.
And so if you take a magical item out of the woods, the hunter is going to come after you to come get it.
Because it can trace it or something,
right?
Right?
Yeah. There's like a weave that's put on all things once leaving the wood, and so the hunter can track exactly where it is.
Right.
Okay.
And so Durzo put the Kakari over it because the Kakari hides that weave.
Okay.
And so he was able to take it out of the woods, and he knocked out Kyler because he knew that Kyler would be like, no, like I'm the immortal one, like I'll go in there and get it, because if you die, you're really dead. And so, but Durzo knew that Kyler didn't have the skill to be able to navigate and do all that. And so he knocks Kyler out and takes the Kakari to go do it for him.
Okay.
The first time I read that, I was like, oh my God, have we just been duped by Durzo again? Like, oh my God. So I really like this scene where after Kyler wakes up in Logan's family crypt, it's very sweet that they included him in the family plot, but also he runs into Blue, that little girl, Blue.
Yeah.
And he takes her to Count Drake's house with a pocket full of gold.
Oh yeah, this is a good scene.
And gives her a note. And it's basically telling Count Drake, like, I have cost you everything. I've literally, by my foolishness, I have killed every person in your family. And so he gives him that note, and he's like, but please, like, take care of this girl. Like, please watch after her. And so Kyler's outside invisible, and he's watching Blue enter the house. And before he goes, he says, be good to Count Drake. I wasn't as good to him as he deserved. And then or maybe he says that in the note. And then Count Drake yells out into the street where he knows Kyler is. He says, you are better than you know. I forgive any wrong that you think you have done me. You will always be welcome here, my son.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh my God. Like,
Yep. And I have to say too, the audiobook narrator, there's a couple scenes.
He does it so good.
He does so good. Another scene that absolutely just got me like deep in the feels was when at the very end, when Ezra and Kyler are talking, and Ezra is like just weeping, saying, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I tried to save her. There's nothing I could do, just crying. And I was like, wow, that's super, super intense.
Yes.
Yeah.
Count was definitely like an underrated, kind of under the radar character, I feel like, but one of the best out of everyone. I wanted to cry when he said, like, you're my son, or you'll always be my son.
Yep.
And,
yes.
Like, always come back. And I was like, but like he had done so much for him, like, because he was the one that took in Eileen after she had been mutilated, right? That was them, and gave her a new life. And he was the one who had like the shady past, right?
Yeah.
And he turned all around, and he was an underrated. I wish we had gotten more of him in book 3.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Because he like wasn't really.
Yeah, he wasn't. He was more of like a supporting character, kind of there in the background. I definitely would have liked a little bit more with him.
Yeah, but with how busy book 3 was, I can see why it wasn't really, there was really a need for it.
Honestly, this should have been the 5-book series. I feel like there's so much going on. So going back to Durzo a little bit, I love the moment when Durzo and Kyler are after Kyler dies on the wheel. It's like from there on out, it's like Durzo and Kyler, like they're a team again, and they're doing like these big missions and doing all the epic fantasy stuff. And because that's something, we got them working together in the first book, but we didn't see them doing, now that Kyler has the Kakari, we didn't see them doing any like super high profile, like, missions and stuff. And so seeing them get to work together again was really awesome. But we also learned that Durzo's name was supposed to be Durzo Flint. And somebody pronounced it wrong. And so he just went with it. It's Durzo Flint. And then Durzo also mentions that he, over the past centuries or whatever, he has found Kakari and spread them to the ends of the earth so that, bad people don't find them. And I wonder, because in the first book, he was looking for a Kakari, and I wonder if he hid them so well that like he hid them in a way where even he wouldn't know where they are. And so I found that pretty interesting, and I'd be super excited if in the next book we get to see some more Kakari, because I would love to see what the others can do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought their relationship was really interesting in the third book, especially because like now Durzo wasn't really hiding anything from Kylar anymore.
Yes.
Like he could understand Durzo's motives now, and Durzo wasn't hiding them from him. And, he didn't have to hide love anymore either.
Right.
So definitely it felt like it completed the character arc and the relationship and where it needed to go, because of how, you look at book 1, he was so mean to him the whole time.
Yeah.
And to finally get that kind of almost like father-son relationship in the end, where they were really teamed up fighting for the same goal, was really great to get.
Yeah, there's even this moment at the very end where right after Kyler has to kill Aline, Durzo comes over and like Kyler can't even move, and he like puts Kyler's hand on the sword, and then he takes his other hand in like both of his and just kind of looks at him from, it's just like this very tender moment between the two. I'm like, I'm glad that they got to have those moments now.
And I liked that the author wrote in random stuff where like Durzo kept reaching for his garlic.
Yeah.
And, like all these like old habits he couldn't, like was trying to break essentially.
Exactly. Yeah. So just because it's super badass, I loved when Durzo gives Kyler the Night Angel vows, and he's like, he's like, if you want, like take the vows of the Night Angel. And it's this great, I am Sakage, a lord of shadows. I claim the shadows that the shadow may not. I am the strong arm of deliverance. I am Shadow Strider. I am the scales of justice. I am he who guards unseen. I am Shadow Slayer. I am nameless. The Karanti shall not go unpunished. My way is hard, but I serve unbroken. In ignobility, nobility. In shame, honor. In darkness, light. I will do justice and love mercy. Until the king returns, I shall not lay my burden down. And I'm just like, just right after he read it, I was like, let's fucking go. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I don't know why that's just so exciting. Like Kyler is the Night Angel now. He's like the hero of legend. And I just love anytime there's any sort of like vows or anything like that. There's also a cool scene right after that where Durzo kind of talks about kind of like what it means to hold this power. The quote is, it was standard Durzo evasion. You don't ask someone you care about to swear their life to horseshit. Durzo was continuing the conversation they'd started months ago about Kyler's destiny. In choosing a life in the shadows, in choosing obscurity, Kyler would avoid one of the greatest temptations of the Black Kakari, the temptation to rule. Its power made him almost a god already, and the danger was always that he could become what he sought to destroy. Durzo hadn't even trusted himself with so much power. Did Kyler think he was that much better a man than his master? Yeah, it says, whatever else he didn't know, Kyler knew he longed for justice. By serving in darkness with eyes that saw through the darkness, by being welcomed into the shadows, he could give justice to those who'd escaped it. Those overlooked, too unimportant for mercy, would find better than they hoped for. Those who should be stopped would be stopped. The faces of the Night Angels were already Kyler's faces. I will do justice and love mercy. I love that whole chapter was so good, where that's the chapter where Durzo is like telling him everything and like all about the Kakaris and everything. I just
finally opening up enough.
Yeah. What did you guys think of this moment where Solon comes in at the last second to give Lantano Garawashi
the
ruby?
Yeah, that was sweet, man. The power of prophecy in this book is
so good.
Yeah, so good. Exactly.
We didn't talk too much about it, but we don't need to go into it that much. Just that Callie is Trace and that she had this relationship with Durzo and they go way back and she's part of like this whole group. That was a really cool realization, I guess. Vi releases the claim to Kylar in the ring. How do we feel about this?
Well, I think it was the kind of she was, kind of at a boiling point. She understood what needed to be done, and she finally got to the point where what was most important lined up with her, I guess, way of thinking. And so, like, in any other situation, would have she been able to break the bond? I don't know. Probably not. But it worked out well.
Yeah, I know. I'm kind of wondering though, like, I almost feel a loss for the bond. Like, I'm kind of like, well, now that Aline's gone, this is like, like, this is like a perfect relationship.
Yeah.
So I was kind of bummed. I forgot about Vi breaking the bond. All right, let me try to wrap this up here. All right, well, I'll just wrap this up then with the whole Aline dying, this scene, the Aline dying and everybody putting their hands on Kurok. This was probably the part of the book that I was just like completely dying at. Like, Aline is dying, and she Kyler at this point knows that she is pregnant. And this is just like this absolute selfless moment. And Aline says, Kyler, there are so many people we love here. I'd give our son for them, won't you? And he's like, no, I won't. Like, I absolutely will not. And she's like, I know you will. Like, I absolutely know you will. So I just loved how like selfless she was, not only for herself, but that she's willing to like sacrifice their future baby for the lives of all these people around them. Something I want to mention, because the outro won't make sense with it if I don't. Sorry.
No, you're good.
Okay, so it's when Vi and Ariel are on, I think they're in the chantry or something, and they're talking about sex, and Ariel says, I lost my maidenhead riding a horse. and Vi says, I had no idea you were so coordinated.
Yeah.
And it said that Vi had tried that once and it had not gone well.
And then doesn't Ariel like clarify, or does she realize she's like, oh, you meant like from the horse? Oh, right. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. I thought that was funny. That was a funny one.
I might as well read these other ones while we're here. We talked about the mouth burning from the curse words earlier.
Yeah.
And Ariel says, I have no moral qualm with your cursing, you fecal-mouthed cretin. When a gutter shite curses, the world can't even hear it. You fecal-mouthed cretin. I love that. And then Vi, in that same conversation, Vi says, I've bedded dozens of men, like going on to say something else. And then Ariel says, good job. The correction, I mean, not the promiscuity.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Nasher noisily eating and stealing Logan's biscuits.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Anything with Nasher was so good. I love that character so much. I love that he's always at Logan's side. I guess the last quote that I'll kind of end with there is Mama K says to Logan, friends, the Sakage relieves us of the burden of friendship. The truth is, in all my years, I've only had 3 friends in the Sakage. One was a wet boy named Durzo, and Kyler had to kill him because of something I did. One was a boy named Jarl who died trying to do what I'm proposing. The last is dying for it as we speak, motioning to Kyler on the wheel.
Yeah.
I just like that.
Yeah, that was sad.
All right. So the last favorite moment that I'll end with here is just everybody coming together and putting their hands on the sword. And it kind of talking about like how everyone's magic was going into this thing. And it's kind of talking about everybody's magic coming out in different notes of music, or at least that's how it's being read, right? And so I have I have this quote that just perfectly encapsulates, if I can get my fucking mouse to move. So it says, Solon found his pitch first, a bass as deep as his speaking voice, wide and strong, oceanic. Sister Ariel matched him, a powerful mezzo, broad but sharp. Then the Magi joined in a chorus of baritones and basses, pure and simple and masculine, laying the foundation. The Magi settled over them, fine and feminine, adding depth and complexity. Vi joined, her talent like a high note with a rapid vibrato, higher than any of the others could possibly go. Then a startling new voice joined, richer than any of the others, layered in mystery, a baritone with such depth and range it dwarfed all the others put together. Kyler's eyes shot open, and he and everyone else stared at Durzo, who had laid a single insolent finger precisely on Kurok's point. Then Kyler felt his place. He sang a tenor, soaring over the other men, interweaving with Vi. He himself was startled at the power of his voice and noticed that all eyes had turned to him, as odd as they had been when Durzo joined. Fierce pride filled Durzo's eyes. Through the euphony, Kyler noticed something else suffusing the whole. It was hope, and that voice, if voice it could be called, was all Aline. Her hope, even as she was dying, drew forth hope from each of them. And with that revelation, Kyler saw that Kurok wasn't a simple tool of magic. It was an amplifier of talent. Kurok amplified the whole man. And dude, that... oh my God, like that scene, it just fills me with so much of the like let's go energy. Oh my God, I'm like borderline tearing up right now, just how awesome it is. So yeah, that is just a great way to wrap up the finale of this book, having everyone come together, everyone put their power together, and just having this big, huge payoff for everybody. All these characters that we've come to know over the past 3 books, they're all in this room and they're all working together for like this single purpose. And then the hunter comes in and gives them that last little bit of magic that they need. And as he touches the sword, Dorian blows up the spell. And oh my God, what an ending, you guys. What an ending. Holy crap. All right, guys. Thank you so much for sticking this out. Any final thoughts on the books? Anything you're looking forward to specifically in the next book? Anything you hope that he writes into it?
Just the kiddos.
The kiddos.
I was gonna say that's all I want to know about.
Yeah.
A story about two twin brothers, and maybe one will be good and one will be evil or something like that.
Yeah.
I definitely hope that's where the story goes.
For sure. I'm interested to see what Vi does with that information, because at the end there, she realizes it as she's looking at Dora and she's like, wait, did he put their kid in her? And she's like kind of putting it all together. And then she's like, oh my God, like I can't tell anybody about this. They'll think I'm crazy.
Yeah.
Like now is definitely not the time to bring this up. And so I, more than anything, in the next one, I want to see her and Kyler together.
Yep.
I want to get some more time with them, because we got like this whole romance in this book, but I want to see them together. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I also want to see kind of her journey of kind of figuring this out, because I feel like she's about to kind of try to unravel this mystery of what's really going on. And she'll probably go and visit Dorian secretly to try to get some answers and stuff. And so I'm kind of looking forward to that. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining me for this. This is one of my favorite fantasy trilogies of all time. And it has been so great to be able to discuss it at length, maybe too much length, with you guys. Sorry, this ran super long.
It's all good.
But no, seriously, it's been amazing to do this with friends, and it's been awesome to just kind of read this at the same time and going back and forth on Twitter and text and stuff, and kind of chat about it. So thank you guys. Sam, you are welcome back anytime that you want to come on. And that's going to wrap us up there, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for our journey through one of our favorite fantasy trilogies of all time. This is really such a special series for us, and it has been an absolute blast being able to revisit it. Someday, hopefully soonish, maybe we'll do a small discussion on the Durzo short story, The Perfect Shadow. Make sure you get notified when we do that by hitting the like, subscribe, and bell buttons down below here on YouTube. If you enjoy our content and want to hear more fantasy and sci-fi meanderings, as well as pictures of my dog, give us a follow on Twitter at Files Fantasy. Also, be sure to check out Sam's blog that I'll have linked down below, and follow her on Twitter. I believe it's at SamReads56. If you like fantasy tweets and Formula One racing. Join us next week for our chat with David Dalglish as we talk about his new book, The Bladed Faith. Until then, try not to lose your maidenhead while riding a horse.
No wonder you had to preface that.
I know. We got so far into the episode, and I was like, oh my God, it's not going to make sense if I don't go through the quotes. Oh.